So we're going to call the meeting to order. Secretary Valentine is here, and I know she has other commitments that she needs to be at. So we're double booked. I know how that is. And for purposes of the meeting, we'll go ahead and call the roll, and it will be done on electronic voting boards. So all those present vote aye on the electronic voting board.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we want to welcome everybody to the Transportation Committee. This is our first meeting of the year, and I know we have a few scragglers out there still, but I wanted to give Secretary Valentine an opportunity to just speak briefly to the committee today so that everyone who hasn't worked with Secretary Valentine have an opportunity to be introduced to her. She and I served together in the House for 4 years, and I've known her for some time and look forward to working with her. And if you'd like to come to the podium and speak to the members, we welcome you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Chairman, my second commitment has been rescheduled, so we are fine. Thank you again. I am Shannon Valentine. I served in the House of Delegates with many of you here today. I then served on a transition team for Governor McAuliffe when he came into office, putting together a document on his policy transition having to do mainly with the impact of HB 2313. And since May of 2014, I have served on the Commonwealth Transportation Board. I really believe that those of us who are in transportation today are in a position to hit the ground running. And I will say in large part to an incredible team that has been put together. And most of them have been able to join me this morning. And so would you all mind just standing as part of my team who are here, DMV, and my Deputy Secretary, Nick Donahue, Jennifer Mitchell, who's head of DRPT, Quentin Elliott, Deputy Secretary of Transportation, Mark Flynn, he's the new head of aviation, and our new commissioner, Stephen Britch. So thank you all for joining me. I will also say that the second reason I believe that we are able to hit the ground running is because of the transformations in transportation that have taken place over the last 4 years, in large part because of the leadership right here in this room. The transformations have really focused on creating a process that is far more transparent, more predictable, and holds us in transportation accountable for the decisions we make. The decisions have been focused on, since the funding of HB 2313, we had the funding, then we set up in HB 1887 how those funds were going to be distributed and invested in regions across Virginia. We made a commitment to state of good repair. We created the SMART scale, which is based on data, and we had the reforms in our P3 office to make that far more transparent. All of this is an effort to help us, to the best of our ability, identify, fund, and complete projects. I laugh with people. We actually have a 6-year plan. So as we move forward, I believe that we can build on a lot of the progress that has been made, and in particular with a new and renewed focus on economic development and competitiveness in every region of Virginia, with a focus on delivering and executing excellent projects on time and on budget. We've made a lot of promises, and how we execute them in the next 4 years is going to be extremely important. I will tell you that what I say to my commissioners is that we would really prefer that they were under budget and ahead of schedule. And finally, by embracing innovation. Innovation to not only solve transportation problems, but to allow business and commerce around the world to let them know that we in Virginia are open for business. That's the platform from which we would like to serve over the next 4 years. When I listen and I know the commitment that you have to creating jobs, I think transportation. How can we advance a network across the Commonwealth that supports and expands jobs, our workforce, business investment, business recruitment, and growth? And so with our team and with you, that is how we would like to begin this tenure.
Well, thank you for being here today and being a part of speaking to us about your vision. And I'm sure that we're going to have plenty of opportunities to discuss that. I hope that the open dialogue will stay open to all of us, especially on this committee, because we're the forefront of who sees these bills and able to work with the administration to try to make sure that we have them in the proper order when they come before us. So thank you for being here with us, and look forward to working with you in the future, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward. I've had the opportunity to meet with some of you personally, and I will look forward to doing that over the next week.
Just one moment, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you.
Welcome, Madam Secretary.
Thank you.
I do have to say one thing about one of your staff members, and I actually told now Finance Commissioner Lane this, but Mr. Donnelly, would you stand for a minute, please? I was privileged to be at the Transportation Summit in Denver, and Mr. Donnelly was there and did an extraordinarily good job describing our smart scale and the way that we're doing transportation here. And we had nothing but positive comments from people from all the way from Hawaii to Maine on that. And I want to thank Mr. Donnelly for being there, doing the good job that he did, and was able to answer all the questions. No, I'll get back to you. He knew all the answers, so you have a pretty good person working for you right there.
Well, thank you very much. And I mean, I've said to some of you, I feel very fortunate that Nick is staying on as Deputy Secretary, and he will play an integral role. Thank you.
Yeah, Nick's done a great job, and I just hope Mike can find a vehicle next time he flies into Hillsville. He came to Hillsville one time, and I had to go pick him up because he didn't realize they didn't have vehicles at that airport.
All those
You're
connections.
going to fix that. I appreciate that. Yeah. We left him a bicycle sitting beside the.
It's multimodal.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. So thank you for coming. Any other questions of the committee?
Thank you all
All
again.
right, thank you. All right. First up on our sign-up sheet, well, we've got some housekeeping to take care of. Senate Bill 250, which is Senator Dance, she has requested that we lay this bill on the table, and by her request, if I can hear a motion, we'll lay the bill on the table.
Chairman, I would so move.
It's been moved and seconded. We lay Senate Bill 250 on the table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that bill will be laid on the table. Next is Senator Stewart's bill, Senate Bill 683. This is the bill dealing with commuter rail operations, the capital fund. This bill will have to be heard in finance. The bill simply creates a fund for future capital funds for commuter rail, and if there's a motion on that bill.
To re-refer to finance, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved that in second we re-refer to finance. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have to do this electronically. All in favor vote aye on the electronic voting board.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Next is Senate Bill 181. This is Senator Stanley's bill. This is suspension of driver's license for non-payment of fine and cost. This is a bill that needs to go to finance also. To courts if we, because it's dealing with the fines and cost of suspension of licenses. If there's no objection, can I get a motion that we re-refer?
Move to refer to courts, Mr. Chairman.
All right. There's a motion and a second to re-refer to courts. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Okay, next on the sign-up sheet, Senator McDougal. Senator McDougal has Senate Bill 410. We've heard this bill once last year, and if you'll give your attention to Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This bill, Senate Bill 410, is pretty simple. Right now, the local sheriffs or police chiefs have no ability to be able to operate what they call a slow burn, have a light bar on their vehicles that is either operating at about 50% or something less than full mobility. Mr. Chairman, right now, under the current law, any sort of lights have to be in full activation and they're approved by the superintendent. What we are proposing through this statute is to give local sheriffs and police chiefs the opportunity in their jurisdiction to decide whether to use a slow burn type of light while they're doing enforcement. The lights would still be approved by the superintendent, but it would give the localities the permission to be able to make decisions for themselves whether to operate it. Mr. Chairman, I know the majority of the area that I represent is rural, and most rural sheriffs will never use this. It's not something that they would traditionally do. But in urban areas in particular, like here in the city of Richmond or some in Northern Virginia, particularly in high crime areas, many law enforcement feel like this is an additional tool to let individuals in the community know that they are present and that they're active and involved in their community, and to make the law enforcement more visible in that area. So with that, Mr. President, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Undersecretary.
Maybe if you were the president, that might serve us all very well. But
Hey, you could. Yeah.
That's a different story. But Mr. Chairman, I have Sheriff Lawhorn here who would like to speak briefly about his jurisdiction and why this is important to him. Sheriff.
Thank you. Welcome, Sheriff.
Thank you. In Alexandria, as you know, which is just outside Washington, D.C. area, this is a common practice in Washington, D.C. and now Prince George's County, so it seems to be a trend in the National Capital Region. We feel that it's another tool that we can use to increase our presence in the community, like the Senator said. It also provides us opportunities to make the community feel more safe, but also a deterrent to crime. As you know, right now, a lot of shopping centers, similar to what you see at a shopping center, when you see the car riding around, it has the lights blinking, it just wants to let everybody know that you're there. So for us, the issue is in security situations where they want us to work off duty and they want the lights on, wears out the equipment, when the deputy or the officer goes back on the public highway to go to another part of the property, creates problems, so turning them on and off. And so we think it gives us another tool. We're just asking for the option. City of Richmond had been doing it, but then it had to stop. I know that the newly appointed police chief in Danville City spoken to him, and he's interested in it. So we think it's a valuable tool to us, and we would appreciate your support on that.
Sheriff, I appreciate you being here and speaking, and this was one of the things, and the patron knows my feelings on it, but, you know, I just, last year in debating this and with the number of law enforcement officers that are being ambushed and targeted in a society that we hadn't seen in a while, that gave me great concern. The other part is the confusion on the public, the general public. Am I being stopped? There's a light on. Do they know? And I know this Richmond City Police Chief had said that they did a informational advertising and that this is what they're going to do. This is changing dramatically what law enforcement does currently, and I know that Washington, D.C. does it, but I've just never really liked to do everything Washington, D.C. does. But those are the concerns that I have, and I don't know how your law enforcement officers in the field feel about it, if it's going to be a target on them or not. And those are some of the questions, I guess, that keep arising with this new approach to that.
Real quick to your first point, it's an excellent point. But the feedback we get is that they're more concerned about being able to work stationary traffic posts, things of that nature. The safety issue is, I believe it has more of a deterrent. It doesn't, advertise that they're sitting in a parking lot and, here I am. A person who's seeking to do that is going to know, because they're looking for them. And we're sort of trying to counter that by saying, we're trying to have more of a presence and more of a deterrent. So what goes in one's mind to attack a police officer is beyond me, but I think this helps. The second issue is, I understand it could create some confusion. That's why I've always been willing to sort of just think about the backside of the bar only. One of the issues that a lot of agencies are facing right now is the manufacturers are selling these bar lights, clear plastic. So you don't even know if there's a police officer 4 cars ahead of you or behind you. They got away from the blue and the red plastic, and so it would give them the opportunity. We've already invested a lot of money in these clear plastic lights to turn the lights on and make them more visible. So I realize that it may cause some confusion. I've tested it a little bit. Don't tell the state police on me. But I've tested it a little bit, and I really haven't had a problem yet. But, we can, look at where they are on the bar light, and if nothing else, just at least the 2 behind you. I understand going forward, you pull up to a red light, car coming this way, sees the 2 lights on steady burn, they get confused. But I haven't experienced that yet. We put about 4 cars out on Halloween night. We do that to help the police and deterrent. I've done it in the past, never really got a whole lot of compliments about it. This past Halloween, we turned them all on and rode around, and I got a zillion calls about it, So that's just the effect it has. But I don't dismiss your concern about that, and I wish we could just sort of come up with a compromise about it.
All right, Senator Steph.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I've seen this in Richmond, and I think this came up last year, the same bill. I've talked to quite a few in law enforcement about this, and the common term, which is a term of military art that comes back, is power projection as a force deterrent. So the fact that they're seen helps deter crime, A, but B, it also, as I was driving up the road from Virginia Beach this morning at 4:30 a.m., there were a few police officers on the side probably having a conversation, state police officers, and they had their lights on. Nobody was pulled over, but they had their lights on. They just wanted to be seen. And I think this isn't just a safety issue. I truly believe it's safety, and power projection is truly a force deterrent. So that's why I'm going to support this bill.
Senator Chase.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll try that again. Just a quick question here as far as the flexibility. If you decide to, if we adopt this policy, and it does give the ability to the localities to determine whether to turn on the solid blue or not. If you go along and you go with the policy, you have the solid lights on, and then let's say there's something that comes up that we can't anticipate at this moment where it desires, you would need to take a different course of action. How long of a period of time would it take for you to change your policy?
Let me see if I understand the question correctly. If we allow it and then it's not working,
or you figure out there's a reason maybe it's not a good idea to continue with having the solid lights on, and you want to change it back to the old way.
Oh, it's a manufacturer issue. It's having them come in and reprogram.
So you would be able to make that decision, though?
Yeah,
Like,
and look,
So if I can help you, all we're doing is giving the authority. Right now, law enforcement doesn't have the authority unless it's approved by the state police, and this law supersedes that and gives them the authority to do it.
Mr. Chairman, I would add the one thing, the type of equipment would still be approved by the superintendent. So we're not saying that there will not be different types of equipment in 130-some jurisdictions across the Commonwealth. The superintendent will probably likely approve 1 or 2 types of lights, and they will likely be the rear-facing ones and not the forward-facing ones. So the options will be limited, but there will be an option where there's not now.
Okay,
But immediately the locality, sheriff could wake up this morning and decide, I don't want my officers to use it, and tell them not to use it. So
Right.
they can
Perfect.
change that instantaneously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator McDougal, I voted against this last year. I'm probably going to vote against it again this year. I see very little difference in this, especially if it's a forward-facing blue light. The reason I bring up my comments is because I actually happened to notice this last year driving around in the city. I saw this blue burning light a few cars back. I said, what in the world? And then come to find out it was the Richmond police that were already using this without the state police concurrence. The only analogy I can make is it's almost like having somebody standing on top of the car going 5-0, 5-0. And it's just kind of like, here we are. Stop what you're doing, because here we are. And I understand the community policing part of it, but I associate my comments with those of former State Trooper Carrico. As many police officers that have become targets in the past year, and we've seen many, I just don't think this is a very good idea. It's the will of the committee. I just wanted to make my feelings known, with all due respect to the patron.
Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see it largely the same way you do about folks being concerned when they see the lights. It's not a feeling that usually makes people feel better. And to go to the point that one of my colleagues made about power projection, it's one thing when our military projects power abroad in potentially hostile areas. I don't think that we want to be projecting power to a free citizenry here in the Commonwealth. And that's why I also do not embrace the bill.
Okay. Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had the opportunity over the past 6-7 years to get around the country and work on youth violence reduction programs in cities all across the country. And there's just been a major change in the way policing is done in this country. Less focus on trying to move around and find people doing things wrong, but more engaging with the community and finding ways to let the community know that you're there. This is the trend we're having, and it's working. Crime is down just about everywhere. It certainly fluctuates, especially in some of our larger cities. But community policing and police legitimacy efforts in trying to connect with the community, this is an important part of it. We're here. We're on your side. It's a visible sign that they're there. You can certainly go into stealth mode when it's required. But at this time, this is a tool that these officers need. They know what they're doing. It has worked in other places. I think we need to give them the trust that their professionalism and their training has led them to the point where this is the decision that they want to make. And I think it's our job to give it a go and see if this creates any problems. I don't think it will. It's worked successfully everywhere, but I would be in support of this bill. Thank you.
Senator Edwards.
Mr. Chairman, I've always thought that community policing works, and also more visibility on the highways really does work. It slows people down. They're all more attuned to the fact that, hey, I better watch what I'm doing. So I think it's a good idea. So support the bill.
Senator Chase. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to speak in support of the bill. In my district, I have Chesterfield, Colonial Heights, and Amelia, and I frequent Richmond a lot because my office is here. And remembered back when you all did have the solid lights here. And I found it comforting being someone from the county who typically does not like to come down for fear of what we hear in the news about what happens in Richmond. And so it gives me great comfort in the city having the solid burn light. I like having the added flexibility that you have the ability as the chief or the sheriff to decide if there's an incident, as we talked about earlier, where police officers, law enforcement is being targeted, you have the ability to shut that down quickly. So for that reason, I'm in support of the bill.
Great. Senator Favola.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to move that we report the bill
Okay,
You're
there's,
comfortable with that motion?
there's a motion and a second that we report the bill. I guess I had one question, and maybe the sheriff can answer it. 15 years that I spent out on the highway, I found out that lights are also an attraction. People see them, everything else washes out, and you have to be mindful that those cars can be a target whenever someone's driving. In this low burning, steady burning light that you're promoting, has there been studies done to show that that doesn't happen with those lights?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a motion and a second that we report the bill. All in favor vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Courts.
10 ayes, 3 nays.
10 ayes, 3 ayes. It's reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and y'all have an enjoyable rest of your afternoon. If you get bored, we'll have some fun things in courts.
Nothing personal. I just have a lot of concerns about
Mr.
that.
Chairman, I would say bipartisanship is alive.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Senator Surville.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, or afternoon.
I guess pick your poison. You got a few of them here, so.
Yeah, I got 3. I think 88 is probably the simplest, then 87, and then 80, and then the 78 is going to have the most interest, I think.
All right, Senate Bill 88 was a bill that we saw last year using the bicycle lanes to prohibiting the use of the bicycle lanes for passing.
Right.
And we have it back this year. Is anything different about it?
We'll have a substitute. Delegate Watts had.
All right, let's
similar
get the
version.
substitute before us. Okay. All right, is there a motion on substitute? It's been moved and seconded. We report the substitute, or that we adopt substitute. All in favor say aye. All opposed? All right, substitute's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, Delegate Watts actually put a bill in. It was brought to my attention. I didn't even know about it. Somebody showed it to me, and I thought hers sort of was a little more elegant and simple and captured the exact same point, and Legislative Services kind of agreed. And so the concept's the same. The legal effect's the same. The bill passed the committee last year, I think 8-5. I mean, I can explain it further if the committee needs me to re-explain, but the short version is bike lanes are proliferating around the state, and there's a lot of drivers that are using them to pass on the right instead of staying out of them, and law enforcement is confused about whether or not they can write people up for that or not, whether it's a violation to use a bike lane to pass another vehicle. And this just makes it clear you can't.
Okay. All right, is there any questions of the patron? Senator, I will say that I still think you have a situation where you have cities that have implemented a lot of these bike lanes that when people see that they're not in use, that they use them, and it does avoid traffic backups from time to time. And I don't know how the process is going to be to create a media attention to avoid that, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who violate this law unintentionally if it passes.
And I would say to you, Mr. Chairman, that I think that this is the kind of thing that DMV can begin incorporating in their driver education programs to new drivers, and also as part of the driving test. You know, it's the kind of detail that I think you learn in that scenario, and you know, as with all things, whenever we change laws, you know, there's always a learning curve. So I just tell you, there is just a lot of confusion right now about, and you know, I think it's mainly people that are in a big hurry. I mean, what we've seen in my district is that you get people on a road, and everybody's in a hurry, and they want somebody stops to take a left. Somebody wants to get where they're going, and they just go around them. It's not necessarily people using it in a big backup. It's just people in a hurry using it, and you know, it's going to cause, I think, increased conflicts with cyclists as these lanes become more popular. If cars are using them to drive in them, which they're not supposed to be in. So that's the point is to raise awareness and create a line and a rule so that people start following it.
All right, Senator Vivola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the patron. Senator Servell, is it your understanding that local governments would then adopt ordinances from this legislation, and they maybe could tailor the ordinances a little bit? I mean, obviously yours is pretty straightforward. Nothing shall permit a motor vehicle to cross a solid line. No, it's just direct. So, but oftentimes local governments will enact ordinances that track the state just because it's easier for the police officers to.
Right.
But
No.
there's no latitude in here is the point.
No, not
No.
exactly.
Okay.
First of all, state law governs the rule of the road, and that trumps local ordinances. Local governments can do whatever they want, but state law still trumps. What local governments will sometimes adopt local ordinances that identically parallel state code
That's
sections
correct.
because they want all the fine revenue from writing the tickets.
Yeah.
And so, if a locality wanted to get fine revenue for writing up tickets for passing on in a bike lane, they would have to conform their local ordinance. But a local police officer or a state trooper could still use the state ordinance in, for example, Arlington County. If they chose, it's just Arlington wouldn't get the fine money, the state would.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. I would think, Senator Servell, it would be incumbent on the jurisdiction to enforce this. I would think it could be challenging to enforce.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just say to the gentlelady that the reason I brought this is because there are localities that want to enforce it but won't because they think there's some ambiguity in the law, and the police departments suggested that we clarify the law so they wouldn't be wasting their time writing tickets that people will be challenging in court. That's why I introduced it.
Oh, that was helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, how many points is the passing? Is it 4?
3.
3. Okay. So each time someone's charged, it's 3 points on their license.
Convicted.
Well, okay, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Good one. Okay. All right, any other questions of the patron? Seeing none, is there a motion on the bill? There's a motion to report the bill. Is there a
Second.
second? All right. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 88 will vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Six ayes, 7 nays.
Bill fails to report 7-6.
See, we had some changed minds from last year, all right?
Just for clarification, Senator Favola, do you still?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure. All right.
Thank you.
All right, next.
87.
Senate Bill 87, careless driving, cause of injury to vulnerable road users. This was the one that basically, you had this one last year also.
Yep. Passed out of this committee 9-4. One more vote than the last one last year.
Okay.
And again, I don't know if this bill is absolutely identical to the one that passed last year, and I don't know if anybody has any questions about it, but this is legislation that's been passed in, I think, 15 other states now, or 19 other states. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
This one, I believe, Senator, is the one that puts the onus on the driver, liability, civil liability wise, if they strike a individual on a bicycle that they're too close to or whatever.
What it does, Mr. Chairman, is it changes the standard when the person who is injured in a situation is a vulnerable user, which is defined as either somebody who's a cyclist, pedestrian, or somebody who else who's not in a motorized vehicle. So it changes the standard from reckless to careless or distracted for users who are more vulnerable to being hurt. And part of the reason for that is that typically when either a pedestrian or cyclist comes into contact with a vehicle, they're often concussed. They can't remember what happened. The forensic evidence left on the vehicle is often very difficult to determine exactly what occurred in the collision because human bodies don't really leave really good marks on cars that allow you to see exactly what happened where, like cars do when they collide. And so it's important there be a lower standard in order to be able to hold drivers accountable in those situations, because the evidence and the way those accidents work are often extremely different. That's why these other states have passed it.
Okay. Any questions of the patron? Senator Edwards.
How does this really differ, since you're saying, let's say, careless or distracted manner? What's the difference between careless and distracted?
Well, the question, I think, I'm assuming, is how's that different from reckless? And I assume that, I don't know if the senator does traffic defense or not, and is familiar with the Powers case.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, but in the Powers case, the Supreme Court has made very clear that the happening of an accident does not equate to any kind of criminal or civil liability. You have to show exactly how the collision occurred.
So how does this differ, though, from...
And reckless is because careless is a lower threshold and distracted is a lower threshold. One can be distracted and careless and injure somebody and yet not be reckless.
But, well, Mr. Chairman,
Edwards.
is that true in the law? I've never seen the...
Well, now it would be true in the law if we pass it, but right
I
now
know,
it's
but-
reckless.
Where does it say reckless? In the existing law?
Yes.
And well, the person, right now, if you're negligent and you cause any bodily injury that's proximate cause, you can sue for damages. So what does this do?
Well, again, this bill is it's a criminal statute. In theory, it could create a line for a civil side, but it's a traffic infraction statute. So I was approaching it mainly from the traffic offense point of view as opposed to the civil side. But,
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't say what the penalty is, at least in what I'm reading.
right, the default penalty for anything in 46.2, Chapter 800 is up to, I think, a $250 fine as a traffic offense, and so you don't have to state the penalty in the actual ordinance. That's in the statute.
Okay, I see what you're doing. Okay. And, Mr. Chairman, so it's got to be serious bodily injury as defined in the code?
Yes.
Why does it have to be a serious bodily injury?
Because if somebody just simply had a bruise on their arm or something, then that's not nearly as bad as somebody getting a concussion or a broken bone or bleeding, which is the kind of incident which causes the problems that this statute is designed to address, where a pedestrian or cyclist can't show what happened because they don't remember anything.
Senator Chase.
Try that again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question of the patron. As a mom of 3 teenage boys who are all driving right now, I'm looking at this bill and trying to think of a possible life application in Chesterfield County. And, what I'm wondering is if, as an example, one of my boys is driving his truck, and let's say the other one is riding a bicycle, and they're trying to not break the speed limit because they know that their mother would not allow that. But let's just say one of our friendly neighborhood police officers sees the boys, one on a bicycle and the other one driving their truck. And let's just say that they're racing but not going above the speed limit, and one of them gets hurt. And thankfully, our law enforcement officer is there to see what happens. What's going to happen in that situation? Am I going to get a fee as a parent? Am I going to get charged? Are they going to get a charge that I'm going to have to pay for some type of injury? Tell me how that would play out.
Well, I'm sure the chairman could talk to you about law enforcement discretion and when police officers actually decide to charge people from when they don't. But under this statute, whatever one of your children does to the other would have to be a proximate cause of the collision. So if somebody's just riding along behind somebody and somebody wrecks their bike, that doesn't come into play. And I assume nobody would be charged for that. But if somebody drove the vehicle in a way that caused the bike to wreck and caused a serious injury, and that's a serious injury, not just a scrape or a bump or a bruise, but a broken bone or blood or a concussion or something that meets the standard malicious wounding, then a police officer, depending on what they saw and again, the chairman could probably talk about the kinds of things he had to deal with, might do something. But if it's two brothers driving along, rolling along, as opposed to two strangers, I'm not sure how many law enforcement officers would feel like getting in the middle of that.
Senator Cosgrove.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the bill, and basically it's quite specific. It says, pedestrian or person operating a bicycle, electric personal assistive mobility device, electric-powered assisted bicycle, wheelchair, skateboard, roller or inline skates, foot scooter or animal-drawn vehicle, or riding an animal. Are all those actually allowed on the highways?
Yeah.
They are. All right. Is there any, a second question, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Cosgrove.
I'd ask the patron, is there any reference to them? No, never mind. I'm good.
All right.
Thanks.
Any other questions of the patron? All right, does anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Champ Burnley, President of the Virginia Bicycling Federation, and we have a number of incidents where people are run over in cars, bicyclists, pedestrians, and they're not, the drivers aren't charged at all. They say I didn't see them, and people are seriously injured. We think this is a good bill, and we think this will also help reduce the number of fatalities and injuries on our road, which unfortunately are starting to go back up. So we would certainly support this bill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, my name is Patricia Watson. I'm the Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Emporia in Greensville County here on behalf of the Virginia Association for Commonwealth Attorneys. And we oppose this bill. We oppose it for a couple of reasons. And I was listening to Senator Serval, but I still think Powers is going to apply if that's what they're trying to get around. The problem that we see with this proposed legislation is that it's going to result in drivers who fail to pay attention and cause serious human life to get convicted of a traffic infraction, while those who are guilty of reckless driving are going to end up with a Class 1 misdemeanor. And I think it's going to cause problems with our prosecutions of reckless drivings. I also don't know of a definition that's going to somehow tell us a difference in careless, distracted, reckless, improper. I think there are just going to be problems with the prosecution of this. We support what he's trying to do, but I don't think this is the means to do it.
So there's nothing, basically what you're saying is the Powers case exists in all these because you have a personal injury, fell to, you're endangering life, limb, and property. And it takes the discretion out of the court's hand if they're charged under a traffic infraction.
Well, yeah, and the Powers case is there, which says that if you can't show what caused the accident,
right,
you can't charge a person. Well, I don't see how it's going to change if you can't show how they hit a bicyclist or anyone else. I don't see what the difference is just because one's going to be careless and one's going to be reckless.
Okay. There's a Senator Edwards.
The Commonwealth Attorney, what is, in your mind, the distinction between negligence and distraction, distracted driving? Careless or distracted, the difference between careless and distracted?
There's no definition for it in the code that I'm aware of, and I'm not sure. I can't say I've looked at all the case law, but when we were going over all of these bills as a group, we didn't know.
So there's no definition of distracted?
Nor to the difference between reckless and improper and careless and...
Well, the difference between reckless and improper, the judges know what it is. I mean, one of the good things about judges is they can read minds better than anybody. Seriously.
But between those four categories, yeah, I think they're going to be intermixed.
We need a definition of distracted, I guess, don't we? I don't know. Maybe we don't. I always thought distracted means negligent. But anyway.
Any further questions? All right. Anyone else in the audience like to speak to the bill? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Can I address any of that? Or?
Oh, sure.
Does anybody need me to clarify any of that? Yeah. I'll just remind the gentleman that improper driving is not a state of mind.
I know that.
The court can find somebody guilty of improper if they think somebody's culpability is slight under reckless driving. That's the standard for improper. And we typically don't use negligence as a threshold in the criminal side. I don't know of any statute that really
You can.
does that.
You could.
Could, but we've never done that.
Right.
Um,
What about distracted? Explain that to me.
Distracted or careless is something that would be up to, obviously, the courts to define what it means. And we pass laws all the time and ask the courts to define what it means. And that's just how we operate here. We don't always define every term. And
Is distracted the same as negligent?
Mayor Edwards.
well, whenever we pass any traffic statute, by definition, in the way the law works in Virginia, if we pass a statute, then it is per se negligent. So if you're speeding, that's per se negligent. If you violate a turn lane, that's per se negligent. If you don't use your turn signal, that's per se negligent. That's how the law of negligence works. So if we pass this equals negligence. But again, I wasn't necessarily focused on civil cases. This was mainly focused on traffic cases, which is why 19 other states have passed this type of legislation. I went to an entire safety conference, a bicycle safety conference, where this legislation was the entire focus of that conference.
Mr. Chairman, you're saying it's like a model piece of legislation?
Senator Edwards.
And how many states have it?
Yes.
How many states have it?
19 as of last time I checked.
But you wouldn't disagree this would be a personal injury lawyer's dream.
I'm not sure. I mean, right now you can already sue for negligence. And I would suggest that usually if you can show somebody was distracted and it caused the collision, that probably would get you to home plate on a civil case. I think this is mainly on the criminal side, because on the criminal side, traffic court side, they often can't, as you heard what the Bicyclist Federation said, if a driver says, I didn't see him, there's no statute under which you can charge them. But if we had this and they said I didn't see them, and you had a bike that clearly a car that clearly collided with a bike that was in front of them, then it's pretty clear they were either careless or distracted if they didn't see him, because they should have seen him if they were right in front of them. And so the idea is to be able to charge somebody with, at least with a traffic infraction, if they say I can't see him. The problem with the Commonwealth Attorney's situation is a lot of these people just don't get charged with anything right now, because there's no statute that they can charge them with if the police officer doesn't have some evidence as to how it occurred, about how they saw or what they saw, whatever. They say I didn't see him, they can't charge him. That's why we need this. It fills that gap.
Senator Edwards.
Still not very clear. What is the penalty? Is this supposed to be like recklessness with this penalty of recklessness? What is the
No.
penalty here?
It's up to $250 fine, up to.
And
Traffic
that's
infraction.
Just an infraction, okay. All right.
All right. Hearing no more questions, is there a motion on the bill? Moved and seconded to report Senate Bill 87. All in favor, vote on the electronic voting board.
Six ayes, 7 nays.
7-6, the bill fails to report. Senate Bill 74.
Right. Yeah, we have a substitute on that. And there's going to be some other amendments too, I think.
All right, is there a motion on the substitute? It's been moved and seconded. We adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, substitute's before us. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this legislation is a bill you saw last year. We had a lot of discussion about it. It's hands-free. It would change Virginia's texting law to make Virginia a hands-free state. As y'all, I'm not sure how much of the details, again, I need to go into on this, but Virginia's gone through a couple different stages on this, starting, I believe, with Senator Cosgrove's efforts back, I want to say about 10 years ago. The state made texting while driving a secondary offense, which meant that it could be charged if it occurred in connection with another offense, but you couldn't be stopped for it. Then in 2011, there was a case in Fairfax County, which I was involved in on the civil side, not the criminal side, involving a young man named Kyle Rowley. Kyle was an 18-year-old young man who worked at he was in college, and for his summer job, he worked at a Rockets in Loudoun County, and he was driving home from work one night back to Herndon on Route 7 when his car ran out of gas coming up the hill. And he turned on his blinkers, got out of his car, and he was pushing his car off the road. And he was in the middle of that when he was struck at 60 miles an hour by another driver who had 1,000 feet of clear straight road with no vision impairments in between him and the car, and struck him at full speed without braking. Killed him instantly, and obviously caused a major wreck. When the forensic was later done of the driver's cell phone, it was shown that he'd been basically texting the entire time he'd been driving right up until the collision occurred. And when the case went to trial for reckless driving, the court found that they couldn't convict him of reckless driving because nobody could prove anything other than the texting, and we had adopted a texting statute which basically said texting was a secondary offense and can only be punished by a $250 fine. So the judge refused to convict him of reckless and or texting for that matter, and it was dismissed. Delegate Klein saw that, as did I and a lot of other people weren't happy with it, and that's what led to a bunch of legislation that year, because the case was pretty well publicized, to make texting while driving a primary offense. And so I think that was in, I want to say 2012 session, we made texting while driving a primary offense. So the problem that's arisen since then is that although we have this on the books, the existing law we have is a complete joke. If the law enforcement will tell you that they can't figure out whether somebody's texting or making a phone call while they're holding their phone, and they can't convict anybody of this unless when they're stopped, they confess to it. And so we have a law in the books that's pretty much unenforceable. It's unchargeable, unenforceable if it is charged, and basically doesn't work. In addition to that, if you consider the law carefully, it's actually legal in Virginia to chase Pokemon while you're driving, or to play Angry Birds, or to order food, or to do just about anything else you can do on a phone, besides send somebody a message. And the other states that have looked at this, or not all of them, but I think 16 states, either 15 or 16 states now, have decided that the best way to deal with this, both from a safety point of view and an enforcement point of view, is to draw the line at just not having the phone in your hand while your car's moving, because that's just a much clearer line. It's a lot easier for law enforcement to say there was a phone in their hand or there wasn't, as opposed to I saw him doing something with it, and I can't figure out what he was doing, but he was staring at it a lot, and he must have been texting, which is pretty much all we have right now. So the other thing I would say is, this stuff has been studied extensively. The Virginia Tech Transportation Institute has looked at it repeatedly. They found that the average text message takes the driver's road off the eyes for 4 seconds at 60 miles an hour. That's equal to a football field. And so if you have people texting while they're driving down the interstate, which when I drive down here every Sunday, I see tons of them, you have people that are driving pretty much with their eyes closed for the distance of a football field repeatedly as they go. And it's just something we need to address. Driving deaths, pedestrian deaths, cycling deaths in this country are up right now for the last 2 years. They're up year over year for the first time in 50 years. And so it's clear there's something going on out there that's causing more people to die and get hurt, even though our cars are getting safer. And most people point at texting while driving as being the problem. And so this, I think, is the way to solve it. I think there's about there's a whole number of bills in the House. I think we're going to be sending a bill come over from them. I think we need our own vehicle, and I would hope the committee would pass this, and I know there's a lot of people here to speak to it.
So,
and I can explain, I'm sorry, there's some other
substitute
amendments.
is nothing but a handheld device with a $125 fine, 250 seconds.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, last year you were concerned about the Class 1 misdemeanor reckless driving piece. I took that out. The maximum penalty under this is a traffic offense. And we also, I know many of you have gotten a lot of new email addresses from your constituents who have amateur radio licenses. That's been fixed by this. If you look online, 28, the use of an amateur radio has been included. And VDOT has also requested an amendment to make clear that VDOT vehicles and engaged in a traffic study is not engaged. And I think we might have made that amendment last year, but it didn't make it into this bill. And I think there's a line amendment for that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, may I read the line amendment?
All right,
It's going to be a line amendment to the substitute.
okay.
So it's on page 2 of the substitute, line 30, after vehicle, semicolon, strike, or 7, and insert 7. The operator of any Department of Transportation vehicle or vehicle operator pursuant to the Department of Transportation Safety Service Patrol Program or pursuant to a contract with the Department of Transportation for, or that includes, traffic incident management services as defined in subsection B of section 46.2, 920.1, during the performance of traffic incident management services, semicolon, or 8.
Is there a motion on that? It's moved and seconded. We adopt the line amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. Senator. Sure. I just wrote it down as VDOT language. Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question of the patron. How would you be able to differentiate someone that's texting from someone that is actually just using their nav?
And if this passes? Well, if you read what if you read the language of the bill, I believe what it says is one of the exempt uses is the use of a handheld personal communications device for purposes of navigation or generating audio transmission, that's music, provided such device is physically mounted to the vehicle. So it has to be, on a windshield mount or a dash mount. Some of they have mounts you can stick on your dashboard and stuff. So if it's in your hand, you're out of bounds. You can navigate all you want as long as you have it hooked onto something on your windshield or in that thing. So that's how I'd answer that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, a follow-up question.
Senator Chase.
So, once again, I'm going to reference the Chase family here because we have a whole fleet of vehicles. And they're older vehicles, they're old pickup trucks. Let's just say there's an emergency situation, and we have to leave in one of those trucks, and I need to use my nav to get to a hospital. Maybe we're out fishing somewhere, and there's not that device in the car. Am I going to be held in violation in that emergency situation? And I just have my nav in my hand as opposed to being stuck.
I would say I doubt it. And the reason I would say that is you look on, I don't know about the substitute. Hold on. On the substitute, it's line 31. Any person using a handheld personal communications device to report an emergency. So, obviously, I'm not clear whether you're talking about somebody reporting it or dealing with it, but I think that would indicate a legislative intent where most judges and law enforcement probably would say that's not a big deal.
Anyone else have a question? All right. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of? Come forward. Janet.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Janet Brooking with Drive Smart Virginia. We strongly support this measure. I have 3 very quick points for you. This is really gives law enforcement the tools that they need to save lives and to address this issue. The way the law is now, it's just unenforceable. So this is a good enforceable solution. That's number 1. Number 2, Virginia Tech showed that texting, which is in essence manipulating the phone, is what they're talking about, while driving increases your crash risk 2,300%, and that's right from a Virginia Tech study here in Virginia. And number 3, Virginia DMV statistics show that over the last 6 years, 1,380 people have been killed in alcohol-related fatals, and 949 people have been killed in distraction-related fatals. So we need to kind of get some parity and start looking at the issue of distraction in much the same way as drunk driving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Kelly Suling from GEICO, and we are in support of this measure. The number 1 concern is for consumers and drivers on Virginia's roads. As Senator Saravel stated earlier, frequency and severity of accidents is up, and that not only affects people's lives, but it also affects your insurance rates, because when we have more accidents, then the rates have been increasing as well. So please support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. My name is Mark Peterson. I'm representing myself. I'm in favor of this bill. Just a short story. I took the bus here today, and just while I was waiting for the bus, it seemed like every other car just had the phone in their hand. So it's definitely a problem on the roads. And I'd like to say also that phones nowadays can basically do everything by voice. You can navigate by voice. You can call people by voice. You can even text by voice. So there's really no need anymore to have the phone in your hand. Once again, I do support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Champ Earl again, Virginia Bicycling Federation. We strongly support this bill. Thanks.
I'm Win Grant on behalf of the Richmond Amateur Radio Club. I'm one of the people that spammed your email boxes in the last few days because of the original provision that included amateur radio in this. But I'm here to say that this amended version that was submitted to you just a few minutes ago resolves our concerns about the bill, so I wanted to make it clear that this does resolve the amateur radio concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Steve Blackstone with the National Transportation Safety Board. NTSB, for those of you not familiar, is a federal agency that investigates major transportation accidents in all modes and makes recommendations on how to prevent their recurrence. I didn't come here today to testify on this bill. I wasn't aware that it was coming up. But NTSB has recommended many times that states adopt provisions prohibiting the use of any handheld device in a vehicle. We've seen far too often in many serious accidents the tragic consequences of drivers' distraction in all modes of transportation, but most especially in highway. So we would urge support of the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Patrick Cushing with Williams Mullen, representing the AAA clubs in Virginia, AAA Mid-Atlantic, and AAA Tidewater, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone in the audience in opposition? All right. Hearing none, we have the bill before us in an amended fashion to only address the handheld device. How many points is that on your license?
I believe it's 3.
Three. Well, okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
All right.
I move to report the bill.
Mr. Chairman, question.
All right. There's a motion to report in second. Senator Chase has a follow-up question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just would you be open for a friendly amendment?
For what?
For line 31 to
Senator Chase, we would have to have the individual who has made the motion to report in the second to remove their motion in order to amend it.
Mr. Chair, if you want to consider an amendment, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. That motion's been withdrawn. All right, Senator Chase.
Thank you. My amendment would include something like this. Any person using a handheld personal communication device to report an emergency or to, in the event of an emergency, that they would be able to, that would be an exemption to the bill. I just want to make sure that if we have people who are in emergency situations, they find a vehicle, that they can get out of that situation. If they have to use their nav or whatever they have to do, they can get out of that situation, drive to the hospital, escape out of an emergency situation. We need to have some type of exception for that situation.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
I might suggest that it would read report or respond to an emergency. Would that be fine with the gentlelady? Senator? Okay.
All right, there's a motion to amend. I guess it's line 32 right now. And it's been seconded. If you'll report that, Chrissy, because just make sure we got it right.
Line 31.
On the substitute, on line 31, after report, insert, or respond to.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. All right, there's a motion that we report the bill as the substitute as amended. All All those in favor will vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Nine ayes, 4 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right,
Mr.
Senator
Chairman?
Barker.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry.
before we get to that, I have Senate Bill 441, which was a much more limited texting while driving bill. Given the posture of Senator Suravel's bill, I would request if mine could just roll into his, and then we could just remove it from the docket at
And I have
this
no
time.
problem with that.
Is it on the docket today?
It is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senate Bill 441, at the request of the patron, be rolled into Senate Bill 74. All those, is there a second?
Mr. Chairman.
I think my original motion was that the bills be rolled together and they be listed as co-patrons.
Okay.
I
Look-
think that was my original motion. Didn't you hear that?
All right.
You may not remember.
Well, let's just do this cleanly. All right, all those in favor of that original motion will vote aye on the electronic voting board. Now, this is only to roll.
I don't want to roll it. Hold on.
12 ayes, 1 nay.
All right. 12 ayes, 1 nay. Bill has been rolled into Senate Bill 74. All right, before we take you, Senator Barker, at the request of Senator Ruff, Senate Bill 410 has been asked to be stricken from the docket. There's a motion. Is there a second? 326. Oh, I'm sorry. 326. All right, everyone in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board. All right, that bill has been stricken. Senator Barker. Thank you for your patience.
Yes, actually, this is expedited, so, but thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 744, and I think there is an amendment. Is there an amendment on this one here? So we take that up.
Mr. Chairman, on line 24 of the introduced version, after bus, strike, taxi, comma, and on line 37, after drivers of, strike, well, actually, we're going to unstrike and passengers in.
All right. We have an amendment to Senate Bill 744 reported by staff. Is there a motion that we accept the amendment? Is there a second?
Second.
Moving second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the bill before us as amended. So you're striking taxis.
Yes, striking
Okay.
taxis so that
Okay.
we don't put them in a situation where they're having to enforce that on somebody else. So.
All right.
All right, Mr. Chair, what this bill does is two things. One is it requires seatbelt usage in rear seat passengers as well as front seat passengers. Currently in Virginia, we require front seat passengers to use seatbelts, and we require children to use them in the rear seats, but we do not require adults to use them in the rear seats. It also changes it from a secondary offense to a primary offense. These are both significant issues here in Virginia. And I would point out that last year, I think there was an increase of over 100 in the number of deaths, traffic deaths that occurred in Virginia. I don't know how many of them were related to seatbelt usage, but this, with an increasing number of deaths, it's certainly something we need to try to address. I think it's 35 out of the 34, 35 out of the states across the country have primary seatbelt laws, whereas a relatively small minority among those states that do not have that. And many of the states also have moved to have it requiring it in rear seat passengers, regardless of whether it's a child or adult there. All the surrounding states have primary seatbelt laws. You know, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. Maryland, every single one of them has a primary seatbelt law. We're the anomaly by not having that right now. And it certainly is having an impact upon the death toll and then the seriousness of injuries that occur there. And in addition, what you have is when you don't have it as a primary seatbelt law, the compliance with the secondary law that we have is lower. The states that don't have that have secondary seatbelt laws but don't have primary seat laws have twice as many people driving without seatbelts as the states that have the primary seatbelt law. So it does have a significant impact upon actual use of seatbelts within the states that are as they are in those two categories. In addition, the research has clearly shown substantially increased fatalities with rear seat passengers when they're involved in an accident and don't have seatbelts. So there are significant implications to both of these, and this would certainly save a lot of lives in Virginia if we had these laws in effect here.
So,
to answer any questions.
So just to get back on your statistics, the last statistics I showed, we are in the high 80s on compliance in states that do have primary are in the 90s. There's only about a 5 to 6% difference.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that the primary law would create more of a compliance when we have shown clearly, even with secondary laws, that compliance has taken place?
Well, I mean, with our laws now, I mean, clearly there are, and all the public campaigns and things like that. I mean, we do have relatively high compliance, but we're not as high as many of the states that have the primary seatbelt laws. And it's and actually, the statistics overall show that when you move from a secondary to a primary, half of those who weren't driving without seatbelts now drive with seatbelts. So it does make a fairly significant difference in terms of utilization there, or at least reducing the non-compliance with that with the law there.
Okay. All right. Anyone on the committee have a question of the patron? All right. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Patrick Cushing with Williams Mullen on behalf of the AAA clubs in Virginia. We support this bill. I'd like to start by just kind of explaining why AAA is interested in a seatbelt law. And I'll do this once during this session so that everybody hears it once. But AAA, a lot of people think of towing and the auto club memberships, but AAA started over 100 years ago to advocate on behalf of the horseless carriage industry, which was the automobile industry. So there were needs back then for motorists. AAA stepped in as an advocate for motorists, and so that's why we support this bill today, looking to save the lives of motorists in Virginia. Earlier this summer, AAA was part of a stakeholder group that included a number of federal agencies, state agencies, and private organizations. I think we were probably 15 to 20, maybe a few more than that. Hopefully many of those made it today. I know a couple couldn't be here, but during that meeting, we had a discussion on traffic safety laws, and DMV has talked about this, but the road to zero, getting to zero traffic deaths, not that we're likely to get there, but that's what we're working towards. And so looking at ways to have the biggest impact on the reduction in deaths on our roadways. And the primary seatbelt law was what I think the group unanimously agreed to as probably the single most important thing to do to get to zero. I want to mention three groups that are not going to make it today, but we're planning, and I think a number of other groups are here today. The National Safety Coalition supports this bill. Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety support this bill, and the Washington Regional Alcohol Program supports this bill. So we have some advocates like RAP who are not just in the transportation, traffic safety, but maybe those are groups in alcohol specific, but still see this as part of the overall effort to get to zero. I want to point to three statistics and then address a question, Mr. Chairman, that you had. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, NHTSA, reports through their analysis of state laws, when a state goes from a secondary offense to a primary offense, they see about an 8.5% bump in seatbelt compliance rates across the state. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that Virginia is somewhere in the mid-80s. I think it's around 85% this year. That's been a jump up. We don't know why, but historically, over the past several years and prior to that, Virginia has hovered around 78, 79, 80% on the compliance rates. The states that have a primary belt law are in the high 80s to low 90s in compliance. So we expect to see, based on the data from other states that NHTSA reports, a roughly 8.5% bump with just a change in law. Now, based on the statistics and the NHTSA report that analyzed all the changes in the state laws, that equates to, in Virginia, 43 lives saved in a year, 692 serious injuries avoided, and $162 million in costs avoided. Those are the numbers that are important to us from the AAA side. Be happy to answer any questions that you have. Otherwise, I'd yield my time to the other advocacy groups that are here today.
Okay. Any questions? All right.
Thank you.
So, Patrick, you're telling us we've now evolved from a horse starting out with insurance to the Geico lizard. So that's what
it's a farmyard.
I got you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Georgine Blumling, and I'm here representing AAA's of Virginia to speak on support of the bill as well. AAA is a motor club representing over 1.8 million people in the Commonwealth, most of which are motorists. And one of our primary missions, as Patrick mentioned, is roadway safety and motorist advocacy. Motor vehicle crashes remain a leading cause of injury-related deaths in the United States. Virginia is currently only one of about 14 to 15 states across the nation that has not moved to a primary enforcement of seatbelts. Studies currently show that the use of seatbelts reduces both fatalities and injuries from motor vehicles by as much as 9 to 10%. And as mentioned, moving to a primary enforcement law tends to raise the usage rate as much as 8 to 10%. Primary belts are associated with fewer deaths due to motor vehicles than secondary laws. In Virginia, after many years of decreasing numbers of traffic fatalities across the Commonwealth, in 2014, the number of fatalities in Virginia rose and unfortunately has continued to increase each year. Of those fatalities each year, over 50% of them are not buckled in. 2017 unofficial figures are also showing, unfortunately, currently a 10% increase in our fatality rate from 2016. Again, over 50% of those fatals are not wearing a seatbelt. Proper use of seatbelts is the #1 action that can decrease fatalities on our roads, even from alcohol and speed-related crashes. It's an anti-drunk driving and an anti-distracted driving law as well. We strongly support Senate Bill 744 and hope you will pass it. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair. All right. Senator Edwards.
Do you have it broken down between where were the people in the front seat or the back seat when they did not have of those that were killed in a car accident without a seatbelt? Were they sitting in the front seat or back seat? Is that broken down?
I would ask DMV if they have those figures.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm George Bishop. I'm Deputy Commissioner of DMV. I do have figures on the number of unrestrained occupants killed in the backseat of a vehicle between the years of 2012 and 2017, so it's a 6-year span. But in that 6 years, out of 1,796 unrestrained fatalities in the Commonwealth, 145 of them were in the backseat of a vehicle during the crash.
Mr. Chairman, is there any indication whether it sounds like most of them in the front seat, so is it more dangerous not to have a seatbelt in the front seat or the back seat?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Edwards, the NHTSA, who gives us many facts and figures about highway traffic safety, indicates to us that that unbelted backseat passengers are 3 times more likely to die in a traffic crash. 3 times, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So, Mr. Chairman, is it fair to say then you need to have a seatbelt both ways? I mean, it's not safer one way or the other, it sounds like. Okay. Because, Mr. Chairman, does that mean maybe they're the people in the back seat are not wearing seatbelts, and that's why there are more in the back seat that are dying.
Well,
Okay, all right.
Hello, Mr. Chair. My name is Mark Peterson. I'm representing myself. Like the other two speakers mentioned, this bill literally can save lives, so I don't think there's any excuse not to pass this. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, again, I'm Steve Blackstone with the National Transportation Safety Board. I do have a written statement that I'd like to have circulated to the committee members, if I could. Many of the statements that I was going to make have already been made. Let me just offer you, though, a little bit of a national perspective with regard to seatbelt use and enforcement. Chairman, you had asked a question about seatbelt use rate here in Virginia. The most recent survey conducted by NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, was for 2016, and that survey found that Virginia was at about 80%, 79 plus, and ranked 45th in the nation in terms of seatbelt use rate. The nationwide rate is about 90%, a little slightly under that. So, at least according to NHTSA numbers, Virginia has a ways to go. Senator Edwards, with regard to your comments, I think the important thing to recognize is regardless of where you're sitting in the car or in the vehicle, you are more safe if you're wearing a seatbelt than if you are not. There are accident investigations and studies that show that rear seat passengers, when they are involved in a serious accident, tend to be thrown around in the vehicle quite a bit and can become dangerous to other people in the car. It's difficult to compare front seat versus rear seat numbers because there are so many more people who sit in the front seat than do sit in the back seat. And typically the front end of the car absorbs much more of the crash damage than does the rear part of the car. So for reasons that have nothing to do with whether a person is wearing a seatbelt or not, the numbers are much higher for fatalities in the front seat.
Mr. Chairman, in the front seat, of course, you got the windshield. In the back seat, you have another seat in front of you. I was thinking it might be safer in the back seat for that reason.
You probably are safer in the back seat because in most cases, it is the front end of the vehicle or the front half of the vehicle that's first going to strike whatever it is that's struck. And so generally, the most significant crash forces are absorbed in the front of the vehicle. And for that reason.
Mr. Chairman, I was thinking that since she said 3 times of the people who without seatbelts in the back seat are killed than in the front seat. I believe I read that. I think you said that. How do you explain all that?
Excuse me?
How can you explain that the people who are unbelted in the back seat, 3 times more of them die that are in an accident than in the front seat? Is that what she said?
I think you got them backwards.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask that he clarify that statistic.
It was a NHTSA statistic that was indicating the likelihood of a passenger in the backseat of the vehicle who was unrestrained being killed. And it wasn't suggesting that there were more people in the back.
No, I understand that.
And clearly there are airbags and the like in the front seat.
Not in the back seat. That could be a factor. Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair, I think that the 3 times is if you're in the back seat and you're unrestrained versus you're in the back seat and you have a seatbelt on, you're 3 times more likely to be killed if you don't have a seatbelt on than if you do. That's the magnitude. So
that's what I understood it to be, yeah.
All right, Senator. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your.
I was done except to offer to answer any questions that you or the other committee members might have.
Sure. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, next.
I will keep it short. I'm Kelly Suling from Geico, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Janet Brooking, Drive Smart, Virginia. We strongly support this measure.
So, Senator Barker, your bill would make it a primary offense for the front and the seat right behind the front seat.
That's correct.
Occupants. So, SUV, the third seat can still be unrestrained, lie in the carriage unit unrestrained. But this would make it completely primary offense from that.
Would make it primary offense. That is correct, sir.
Any question? I know that Senator Suderline had a question earlier. Do you still want to?
That was for one of the people presenting.
We can bring them back up.
How much time they got to speak already? That's quite all right.
Okay. Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question of the patron. I appreciate what you're trying to do.
Right.
And I always take this back to my 4 kids who are all driving age. And, you know, I'm thinking of my 19-year-old who's driving, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I look back and see one of the younger brothers not buckled. Now, I won't tell you what I do to that son for not following the law. That will not go recorded. But I think what would happen to my older son, Joe, who is simply trying to drive. He's following the law. He's paying attention like he should be, not looking behind in the back seat to his younger brother to see that he's not buckled in and following the law like he should be. I don't want my 19-year-old son to be penalized when his younger brother doesn't follow the law like he should. So for that reason, I'm afraid I'm going to have to oppose this bill.
All right. Any other questions of the committee? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move the report.
There's a motion to report. Is there a second? All right. Substitute motion? Is there a second? All right. PBI's primary motion, non-debatable. All those in favor say or vote aye on your electronic voting board.
Seven ayes, 4 nays.
All right. The bill fails to, or the bill is PBI.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. What we have left now are committee members' bills. And I have, if we can do a couple of them real quick. Senator Edwards, you have a bill that is a special license plate bill. All you're doing is changing which, the name of the organization, I believe. Do you have a witness here? Okay.
Yeah, the DMV chair head has you have an amendment, Rick, is that right?
I don't believe so.
I thought I got something.
All the bill does is it adds to what the entity can do with the money.
With the money,
just to
right.
clarify, and I don't think
It's
we have
already,
an amendment.
the entity already receives it.
Right,
It
so
just
you don't
adds
need
what
the
they can do with it.
450. The money is just, it expands the purposes for which the monies can be used.
Is there a motion on the bill?
Wasn't there an
All
amendment?
right, Senator DeStef.
I think we actually need to hear this one.
Okay.
Because typically, when license plates, funds for license plates are put in, they're given to that charity or focused on a specific usage. They're not used for the organization's operations.
Right.
This actually uses that money for the operation of the organization, which is not really typical from like the Chesapeake Bay license plates and some of the other ones. And like for example, on the Chesapeake Bay, we have very strict requirements what the money can and cannot be used for. So in operations, it cannot be. So I think this may be one we want to hear.
All right, we'll hear it.
Okay. Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Edwards.
what this bill does, has to do with the Friends of the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it provides that the funds should be used to support operations and programs of the the amendment would be in Virginia. On line 23, page 1, I'd like to make a line amendment after the word operations and programs, add the word two words in Virginia, period.
All right, there's a motion that we amend line 20, if you'll report that.
On the introduced bill on line 23, after programs, insert in Virginia.
All right.
That's it.
All right, and so now the question is the repurposing the money from what it was intentionally done with the programs were to clear the scenic overlooks along the Blue Ridge Parkway and promote tourism. Now it's operation and programs. Do you have an explanation as to why they want to change?
I was asked to put it in by the Friends of the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Okay.
Because they felt that it would be broaden the use of the funds.
So you're basically saying they've done cleanup over all the overlooks and they're
it would be broader than, it could be used for broader than that on the Blue Ridge Parkway in Virginia, not in North Carolina, because it goes all the way from Afton Mountain down to Asheville, North Carolina. We don't want to help North Carolina. We just want to help Virginia.
So I'm being advised by my attorney that we say operation and programs and other license plate bills that we have passed in the before. So
I might
is there
point
any
out,
other questions?
this is the 70th anniversary of the Parkway. It opened up in 1938. Is that my math right? 80th year of the Parkway. Is that right? I think that's right.
All right, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask, when we first did this plate, it has the requirement of 450 plates or better on the plates. I just don't know that it's a really good idea to all of a sudden change this. I mean, have we received some type of resolution or something from the members who have these plates that are friends of the Blue Ridge Parkway to go from what they thought this money was being used for instead now for operations?
Mr. Chairman, it would be prospective. Once the bill goes into effect, they would be given official legal notice as to of the change beginning July 1.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
My question was, has there been a polling of the members of this organization who have these license plates, whether they agree to this, or is it just a administrative request by whoever administrates the program?
I doubt seriously anybody's done a poll. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
All right.
Rick, do you know the answer? I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cosgrove, not that we're aware of, and it probably would be impossible for that to occur because obviously the vehicle information is not private, but the ownership information is very private. Right. We would not be able to release that to the Blue Ridge Foundation to inquire. Now, certainly if they would want us to inquire, based on our budget, we'd have to have someone pay for it. I can't afford stamps to, and you say 450. Actually, this plate, before you can start revenue sharing it, we have to have over 1,000 sold.
Right.
And this is a very popular plate, and it's over 1,000. So if you would want us to poll the folks, we'd ask you to do a budget amendment to pay for for that.
That's not necessary. A further question, Mr. Holcomb.
Senator Cosgrove.
Well, Commissioner Holcomb, with the revenue sharing plates, $15 is going to be paid to the state treasury. Therefore, $10 would go to the organization. So you have over 1,000 plates. Now we're talking $10,000 going to the organization.
It's the other way.
It's the other way around.
On a revenue sharing plate, the state DMV keeps $10 for our cost to administrate, and then the $15 goes to the foundation.
Right. Okay,
But they have to have 1,000 sold.
I understand.
So yes, we get the full $25 for the first 1,000. Right. So we love revenue plates that only sell 999.
Okay. So Chrissy, do we have something from Friends of Blue Ridge that requested this? And
Mr. Chairman, I have before me a letter from the executive director of the Friends of Blue Ridge Parkway, requesting this change specifically.
Do they mention anything about their operations and why?
Mr. Chairman, the letter states, as our organization grows and we undertake additional responsibilities to help maintain the Blue Ridge Parkway, we would also like to use the funds that we receive to support operations and other programs of our organization.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move to report.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. We report Senate Bill 792. All in favor, vote aye.
Nine ayes, 3 nays.
Bill reports 9-3. All right. Senator Favola, Senate Bill 46. Oh, she gone? I'm sorry. Senator Suderline, we've heard your bill for. Yeah, you can sit right there if you'd like.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two bills. The first one is Senate Bill 104. Which one would you like to go first?
Just go.
All right, Senate Bill 104 is identical to Senate Bill 1409 that the Senate passed last year on a 34-6 vote. It came out from this committee with a very strong recommendation last year. The bill would eliminate the possibility of someone driving 11 miles over the speed limit being charged with a Class 1 misdemeanor that holds up to a year in jail and or a $2,500 fine. The very threat of a Class 1 misdemeanor compels a lot of Virginians to spend hundreds of dollars on attorneys when employment and security clearances are threatened with the possibility of a conviction of a Class 1 misdemeanor because they went 11 miles over the posted speed limit on our interstates. And I hope it will again be the pleasure of the committee to report the bill favorably.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Senator
might.
Cosgrove.
Thank you. I'd just like to expand on the definition a little bit. We have sections of the roadway in Virginia where it's 70 miles an hour. And reckless driving in the Commonwealth is 20 miles an hour over the posted speed limit or exceeding 80 miles an hour. So if you're driving in a 60 mile an hour zone and you do 19 miles an hour over, which would take you at 79 miles an hour, basically you're going to get a speeding ticket. The same thing doesn't happen in the 70 mile an hour zone. If you're driving 70 miles an hour, all of a sudden you need to make an evasive maneuver, or somebody's going slower in the right lane, you move to pass, and you exceed 10 miles over that posted speed limit, all of a sudden you are going to be tagged with reckless driving. Now, reckless driving is more than just a Class 1 misdemeanor. I mean, it's serious. Your insurance rates are going to go through the roof. There are serious penalties for reckless driving. This is a bill, I think, that his time has come. We have 70 mile an hour speed limits throughout the Commonwealth. And I think that this is just a little hedge of protection for the folks that are driving on our highways. So, Mr. Chairman, I would heartily support this bill.
Mr. Chairman?
Not to mention it's 12 months in jail and up to $2,500 fine.
That's one right.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Edwards.
With deference to my colleagues who do a lot more traffic defense work than I do and like to charge steeper fees for reckless driving charges, nevertheless,
this is not a lawyer bill.
It's not a lawyer bill. Routinely, at least if you have a lawyer, you go to court and you're driving 83, it's going to be reduced to the infraction of 79 or something less than that. And so as a practical matter, you may be charged and convicted without a lawyer going 81 or 83. But if you have a lawyer and you show up in court, even if you show up in court yourself, the odds are the judge will reduce it anyway. So this is the practice. If it's under 85, the likelihood of ending up with a reckless driving conviction is not very high. So I think the practice is it's being treated like an infraction, despite the fact that you could be, and you're often charged with reckless driving. So I think it ought to be, I think we ought to increase it to 85. And I know my lawyer friends will probably not be happy with me.
All right.
Chairman, if there's nobody else to speak.
No one else speak?
I'd move to report the bill. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
withdraw.
let's hear from,
I would.
all right, Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Those in favor can line up.
Patrick Cushing with Williams Mullen, representing AAA. We oppose this bill for the impact it might have on accidents and traffic deaths. I will confess that a Class 1 misdemeanor is a very serious offense. And that serious offense is there because of the risk that drivers take when they begin to exceed 80 miles an hour. The line has to be drawn in the sand somewhere, and we think it's appropriate where it is today. To give you two statistics, and the risk comes in part from the time and attention that is required, and then the mechanical requirement of the car to stop or slow down when you see something happening on the roadway. So there are two components, a perception reaction time and a mechanical reaction time of the car to stop. So I'm going to give you some stopping distances. At 70 miles an hour, which is the speed limit, the highest speed limit in Virginia, the stopping distance for a car that is of modern capabilities is 348 feet. At 80 miles an hour, which is our reckless today, the perception and braking, the combined stopping distance is 439 feet. That's a little over 90 extra feet to stop just between 70 and 80 miles an hour, which is the equivalent of 6 car lengths. Once you get over 80, that number continues to go up. One of the things that the Commonwealth has done, VDOT has done, because of the seriousness of the potential penalty, is install some signs on I-95 and 81. And with the Chairman's permission, I'd like to just hand something out very quickly, just so everybody has it. You all can take that. But the Commonwealth has posted an above 80 mile an hour is reckless driving. Penalties are higher. Those signs have been deployed on areas specifically on 95 and 81 where the incidence of crashes are higher or where the incidence of speeding is greater than that in other areas of the roadway. So the signs are out there warning drivers of this, and very rarely do we put such prominent signs out in the public, the state does, to warn citizens of the law and the penalties associated therewith. Going to the second piece on the penalty provision, which Senator Edwards mentioned, both the court and the Commonwealth's attorney have the authority to drop a reckless driving charge when the culpability is slight. You heard that from Senator Surville today, to a traffic offense called improper driving, which is a fine of not more than $500. And so it would be an interesting talking statistics, interesting number to see. I don't have it today, but how many convictions do we have for reckless driving under the speeding statute between 81 and 85 miles an hour today? Don't have that. That may go Senator Zierlein's way. It may go our way. I'm not sure, but don't have that today. So with that, AAA is opposed to the bill, and we ask that you vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chair, my name is Mark Peterson. I also oppose this bill. I'd like to say that last year my wife was pulled over in this exact situation. I think she was going 81 or 82. We had to get a lawyer. We ended up spending a lot of money. That being said, like if this bill would pass, it would save us a lot of money. I still am very much opposed to it. I don't think we should be, encouraging speeding in any way, shape, or form. The other speakers could probably mention a lot more of the statistics resulting in speed-related deaths. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience like to speak in opposition? Does anyone like to speak in favor of the bill? All right.
Mr. Chairman, now I make a motion now to report the bill.
All right, the motion is to report. Is there a second? Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. We report Senate Bill 104. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board. I'm aye.
8 ayes, 4 nays.
Bill passes 8-4. Senate Bill 515.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you also for favorable consideration of the second one. Senate Bill 515 is a bill that simply strikes association of realtors and makes it Virginia Realtors. And the reason for that on the license plate change is because the name that the large organization of real estate professionals in the Commonwealth has changed from the Association of Realtors to Virginia Realtors as they do business. We'd hope to do it administratively, but it appears that is not possible. So I'd ask that you all report on this bill favorably.
All right. Senator Cosgrove.
I'm sorry, just a quick question. Are we going to have to replace the Association of Realtors plates that are already out there with the new plates?
No, that is not the intent. The intent is so as new plates, as new realtors come online or current realtors decide to get the plate, they will get the new plate going forward.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, patron? Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor or in opposition to the bill? It's been moved, and is there a second? Second. It's been moved and second that we report Senate Bill 515. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, the bill reports 12-0. Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 363, and I know that everyone in this chamber and the chamber down the hall thought a lot of, as did I, the former delegate Lacey Putney. The locality that he lives in and that I live in, Bedford County, has come together and passed a resolution. And in the resolution, they have asked that a portion of Route 221, which is for the most part, a two-lane road that goes from the city of Lynchburg and goes to Bedford City, what used to be Bedford City, now is the town of Bedford, be named in honor of Lacey Putney. Mr. Chairman, we do have the required documentation which the county has passed. I also have with me some renderings that VDOT was kind enough to come up with, and I'll pass those down this way, and then maybe we can pass them the other way. Mr. Chairman, I would hope that we would pass this bill and allow VDOT and Bedford County to honor our fallen friend.
Thank you, and a little history there about Lacey. Lacey was elected one day before I was born. And I always told him that we had a lot in common when I was in the House. I was born right after he got elected, and I was his good luck charm. So I know Lacey was probably one of the longest serving members, if not the longest serving members in the House, and I think it's appropriate that we do this in honor of him. Senator Cosgrove.
Mr. Chairman, I absolutely agree with you. Many of us here on this dais, I know Senator McClellan, myself, you, I'm getting there, Senator DeStaff, and others served in the House with Lacey. Lacey was my seatmate. He was also the Speaker of the House during a difficult transitionary time. He was by far one of the most genteel, old-school statesmen that this Commonwealth has ever had the privilege to have serve in its legislature. And Senator Newman, we could not ask for a better memory for him than what you've brought forth, and therefore I move that we report this bill.
There's a motion and a second, and we report Senate Bill 363. All in favor vote aye on electronic voting board.
Ten ayes, 0 nays.
All right. The bill reports 10-0.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Next up.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I wasn't fast enough to vote
Okay.
a couple proxies, so having voted on the prevailing side, by which we reported Senate Bill 363, asked that we reconsider that vote.
Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, and we reconsider the vote in which we passed Senate Bill 363. All in favor, vote aye.
We need to clear the board.
Oh, yeah, clear the board. All right, this is for reconsideration.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
All right,
I renew my motion to report the bill.
it's been moved and seconded, we report Senate Bill 363. All in favor, vote aye.
Twelve ayes, 0 nays.
12-0, the bill reports. Okay, who we got left in here? Senator DeStef. I got you next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd like to present, I guess first we'll go with Senate Bill 575. What this bill does is it allows the owner a 1-month extension of registration of their vehicle if registration has been withheld because they didn't pay a toll. So basically what happens today is if you're given a toll and there's a toll violation, it's not paid, then your registration can't be renewed. If your registration can't be renewed, then you can't drive. If you can't drive, then you can't get to work. So what we're doing is we're requesting that they be allowed a 1-month extension on their registration before it's suspended to allow them to pay their tolls and allow them to, well, basically pay their tolls and keep working. So it's a good right-to-work bill.
So you're asking for a 1-month compliance on toll violations?
Mr. Chairman, that'd be correct.
Okay. All right, any questions? Anyone in the audience like to speak for or against? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded. We report the bill. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Yeah, please. Normally they put it down
You can
here,
vote
but
up
maybe not
there.
today. Well, not this time.
Yeah.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
All right.
So, Mr. Chairman.
575 passes 12-0.
Members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, next we have Senate Bill 586. It's exhaust system exclusion. And basically what this does is, in the past, if you had an antique motor vehicle that was manufactured before 1950, it was very difficult to get a muffler for it. You'd have to get a specialty-made muffler. You couldn't get an off-the-shelf, approved by the manufacturer muffler. Well, as you know, this bill, as the cars have gotten older and older, we're now going to try to do this for all antique cars because here's a good example. I've got a 1987 Grand National GNX. You can't get a muffler and the appropriate exhaust pipes for it, so you have to have one manufactured. You can't get one that meets specific manufactured specifications without running through a bunch of tests and all that. But what we're doing is we're saying that any antique motor vehicle, so one that's, God bless you, one that's 25 years or older, that when it comes to the exhaust system, you can go with an aftermarket exhaust system and make sure it meets as close to factory standards as possible. So it's truly just deleting 4 letters or 4 words out of the code.
So you're allowing, right now it's up to the standard in which the manufactured vehicle is put out on the street. You're just
Correct, and it's
given
unavailable on a lot of cars from
Right.
1950 through about 89. Some of them you can, some of them you can't get. It's almost impossible on a lot of them.
All right. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of or against the bill?
State police have no position on this. We've worked on it together, so.
Move to report the bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Wexton.
I have a question for the patron. And forgive me if you said this, I had to
get our other members back for their bills. Is antique motor vehicle defined somewhere in the code?
It is, as a matter of fact, it's 25 years or older.
Thank you. That was my only question.
All right. There's a motion that we report the bill. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting.
11 ayes, 1 nay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Bill reports 11-1. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 73 dealing with overweight permits for farming vehicles. Mr. Chairman, in 2017, the General Assembly passed and the governor signed my bill, HB 1519. I'm sorry, it was Doug and Nice bill as well, which established statewide overweight permit for vehicles hauling farm produce from their point of origin to the first place of delivery. And previously, the permit was available only in Northampton and Accomack counties. The permit, which may be purchased from DMV, allows vehicles to have a single axle weight of no more than 24,000 pounds, a tandem axle weight of no more than 40,000 pounds. And it goes on to give the other weights. Well, Mr. Chairman, North Carolina and other surrounding states have a 90,000 pound gross weight limit. We passed a bill either last year or the year before allowing logging trucks to meet that weight. I've been approached by the Farm Bureau and other agriculture agencies to allow them to have the same weight ratio that's enjoyed by the silviculture industry. Mr. Chairman, we talk about all the time about how agriculture is the #1 economic development activity in the Commonwealth, and I think this is a common sense approach to helping them do their business. You know, farming is hard enough as it is; it gets more expensive, and if we can make fewer truckloads, that'll reduce the carbon output and footprint. It'll reduce the amount of gasoline consumed and keep more trucks off the road.
All right. Any questions of the patron? All right. Anyone in the audience? VDOT, do you want to speak to the bill? Andrew, you going to speak? Okay.
I think they're opposite sides.
Yeah, I understand that. I just want to make sure they, we're going to hear from the opposition and then the, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Joanne Maxwell from VDOT, and Senator Cosgrove's rendition of the facts and the history for this bill are accurate. One of the things we would point out is when for HB 1519 last year, when that legislation was enacted and basically allowed these heavier agricultural trucks to operate statewide, it left intact basically what we call the bridge formula. And the bridge formula is a table in section 46.2-1122 of the code that limits the operation of, that has the effect based on legislation or this statute today, that has the effect of limiting the weight of vehicles that can cross bridges in the Commonwealth to certain weights along with certain axle spacings or configurations. The concern we have with this bill is when the language now allowing these vehicles to cross any bridge as long as the bridge is not posted. The concerns we have is today when we load rate and post bridges, we base it on a certain configuration of vehicle, certain axles. We make certain assumptions regarding axles and regarding the weights. Those assumptions have not been made for the current load ratings for bridges, and hence, if a bridge is posted, that does not necessarily mean, if it's not posted, it means it might be safe for an 80,000 pound vehicle, but it does not mean it would be safe for a 90,000 pound vehicle. We have concerns. We believe there are, and we've been talking to the industry and trying to work something out. At this point, we've met a bit of an impasse, or at least our first pass has not been successful. We have, had offered an amendment that would basically limit the 90,000 pound vehicles to 6 axle vehicles with a vehicle space or with an axle spacing of 55 feet, and then limit the 5 axle vehicles to 84,000 pounds. Industry has noted, that, and it's probably not fair for me to talk to industry, but they have concerns with that amendment. So at this point, we're at a bit of an impasse. At this point, if this bill goes forward, we have concerns and would be opposed right now. We would like to, if we can, fix the bill or make it workable. But currently, the way the bill is written today, if it passed, there would be we'd have serious concerns with the degradation to our bridges and potential safety impacts. And we would have to go out at this point, based on the language of the bill, and load rate and repost virtually all of the bridges, well, at least reload rate all of the bridges in the Commonwealth, and then repost, and that would take a couple of years. So, Mr. Chair, for those reasons, we have strong concerns with this legislation.
Thank you, Joanne. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? All right, Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Andrew Smith with the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation, and I've also been asked to mention that the Virginia Agribusiness Council and the Virginia Poultry Federation also supports this bill. We appreciate the concerns that were expressed by VDOT, and we appreciate the description of the bill by Senator Cosgrove. It's exactly right. We appreciate the unanimous approval of this permit last year, and as Senator Cosgrove described, this code section has been around for decades that was only allowed on the eastern shore. And I wanted to mention that up front because the amendment that was mentioned, proposed amendment, would have negatively impacted those people that have been using it for decades. And we didn't want to have something that we were trying to go statewide that we put in place last year to negatively affect people that have been using it for decades. So I wanted to mention that. But I wanted to mention also that last year, before it reached you in the Senate, the patron put in a language that this permit would be only allowed from the point of origin, the harvest point, to where it was first delivered, to minimize how much road time or any bridges that it would be caused. We did not realize that the prohibition against going on any bridges until we were working with DMV to come up with an explanation of how to process or apply for the permit. So we feel that we're coming back for a technical amendment to fix what we had approved last year before you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Jason Carter with the Virginia Cattlemen's Association, and I'm speaking separately but in support with other agribusiness industry affiliated groups. I support the comments that Andrew made and also would ask the committee to consider the Virginia Cattlemen's Association. Our affiliated dealers and members facilitate the intrastate sale of tens of thousands of feeder cattle around Virginia annually. Many of these cattle leave farms without scales and tractor-trailer load lots. They don't leave on a weekly basis. They leave seasonally, so we feel the traffic impact would be minimal as well, particularly from the point of sale to the destination that they're going to travel. This permit would facilitate another step in smooth operations in a very lucrative Virginia beef cattle industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a question for Joanne with VDOT, if she could come to the stand. I highly support agribusiness, but I also had a father who was an engineer and understood bridges and bridge design. And I know in Chesterfield County, I just want to make sure that we're not endangering farmers and anybody else that would use those bridges. I know in Chesterfield, even our firefighters and our fire engines, there are certain bridges in our county that are that they're not able to use for safety reasons. So is that a concern of yours?
Mr. Chair, that is a concern, and it's right now it's based on the fact that, again, the restrictions as far as crossing bridges that are currently in this code section would be eliminated, and a vehicle weighing 90,000 pounds again could cross a bridge that has not necessarily been load rated to address that weight. That is the concern, and if this bill passes, we are concerned about the safety ramifications, whether it would be, and I have a couple of engineers here too that can talk about the issue. It may not be one time, it may not be the second time, but eventually something could happen with that bridge. And as we continue to add on to the vehicles that can be crossing bridges at these higher weights, there are concerns that we are beginning to significantly cause issues with our bridges. and that is a concern. And I've got the chief engineer here with me.
How many bridges outdated do you have that can't handle that kind of weight?
Mr. Chair, I'll let one of our folks address that.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kendall Wallace. I'm the State Structure and Bridge Engineer. Could you repeat your question, please?
How many outdated bridges that can't handle the 90,000 pound do you have?
There are, the entire inventory is about 21,000 structures, and that includes large culverts, about 7,000 large culverts, and about 13,000 bridges. Now, the code...
That are not rated for 90,000 or that you have?
Total inventory.
Total, okay.
Inventory, sir. Yes, sir. So the bridge code that we have right now was for a live load, a vehicle that we designed for since 1944 through 2005. We have about 6,000 bridges that were designed for less than the 80,000 pound loading.
So those trucks that are 80,000 now are traveling across those bridges?
They are.
Even though they're not rated for it?
They have been, the 80,000 pound vehicles have been, all the structures have been rated for the 80,000 pound vehicles.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Chief Engineer of the Virginia Department of Transportation. Garrett Moore is my name. Don't usually come to this committee, but in signing these things, I have concern on this. I can't talk to North Carolina, but the average age of a bridge in Virginia or culvert is 48 and a half years. The typical design of a bridge is 50 to 75 years. That's an old inventory. It wasn't until 2007 that these bridges off the interstate started being designed for 90,000 pounds. So by definition, what we are doing is we are sending our folks out to say we can now overload a bridge that might be 40, 50, 60 years old that was never designed to handle 90,000 pounds. It's gone through maybe thousands or tens of thousands or millions of cycles of loading fatigue that's gone through. My concern is not just with this bill, but with the previous bills. My experience is when you start to encroach into what is, we used to call the factor of safety, that it creeps up on you and eventually you get to a point where it's not a good place to be. An example with this is we have been improving our system over the last few years, but our engineers have run calculations with this. These stresses are, in some cases, are over 50% in some locations on the bridges of what they were designed for. The old factor of safety that many of these were designed under, we don't use that anymore. That's about a third of the way into it. I would liken it to taking your oldest set of tires that you're going to turn in a month and overloading it by 12%. You can probably do it a lot of times, but if we continue on this path with this bill and other bills and grow this out, my concern is we're starting to play both ends against the middle. Is this, I'm not going to come and say the sky's falling. It's not going to happen immediately, but at some point you run into that line where it isn't safe anymore, and that's the concern we have. And I just want to, I felt it was serious enough to come over and voice it. We work for you. We'll do our best with it wherever it goes. But at the same time, my recommendation would be that we stick within the original design. These things were designed well 50, 40, 60 years ago. But when you start playing both ends against the middle, and that starts to increase as our system continues to age, I have concerns with where we're going with that. And that's what I wanted to express to you all, and appreciate wherever you all go with it. So we'll work with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Chase.
Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up question, really for anyone on VDOT, Joanne, or one of the engineers. Of the 21,000 structures that you all monitor, do you have a way to identify those bridges that maybe have more of an issue than others?
We are on a 2-year inspection cycle, and for any bridge that is considered not structurally deficient, there's a scale. They go out and it's a checklist. It's a very good system. If they become structurally deficient, there's it goes to a lesser number of years between, or it could be 6 months or a year between cycles. So we do that. The difficulty becomes is these may look
perfectly okay. We don't have any way of measuring the cyclic loading over time. Non-destructive testing is only so good. You saw what happened with Metro here, many of you, 2 or 3 days ago with their track. They had done non-destructive testing. That's not perfect. So we have a very good system. We've been improving the condition of our bridges steadily over the last 7 years, but the inventory continues to age. So my concern is just that we don't push that limit too far. I mean, we're working hard to keep them and get them in better condition with that inspection cycle, but it's still, our average age, I think, has gone up, maybe 6, 7 years over the last 10 years. We're rehabbing a lot of them to get them in better shape, and we do have it, but it's not perfect.
Let's circle around real quick here, though. Most of your primary travel bridges, their capability is at 90,000, but you're talking about bridges that are on secondary roads that most people don't commonly see. These are secondary roads that go across a creek, go across a small waterway.
Many of them, yes, sir.
Yeah.
That has some, I guess, mitigating factor that, but the smaller ones tend to be, but not all. I was a district administrator in a rural district, Stanton District, and not all of those bridges. Some of them are old truss bridges,
right?
Things that we call fracture critical, but you're right, many of them are narrow, and those probably have less of a threat than the longer ones, but we're asked to do them for all of them. So,
right.
Yes, sir.
But most of our primary bridges are already up to speed to
as far as
accommodate a 90,000 pound.
Yes, sir.
Only our older bridges that are out on secondary highways and so forth that may lead back to the farm.
It would typically be that, but you can answer that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, about 2,000 structures on the secondary system were designed prior to 1944, and on the primary system, about 4,000. So it's still a significant number of structures on the primary that were designed for less than 80,000 pounds.
But after the Minnesota incident, there was a lot of money that was put into these bridges to reconstruct them or refurbish them to be able to handle a lot of what is out there today.
We inspected, we've been working on them, but our replacement cycle for bridges, we're doing rehabs, more so than replacements. Our replacement cycle for bridges is currently about 170 years. And so we're rehabbing them, we're doing what we need to fix them, but that's why we have an average age of about 48 and a half years.
Right.
And so we're making the best of the system we have.
Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what I'm trying to figure out, I want to try to accommodate everybody here in the sense that I want to help the farmers. I'm from a family of farmers that want to simply transport their commerce, if you will. But I also understand engineering. At some point, your bridge is going to break, and then you can't go anywhere because it's broken and the bridge is out. So is there any way to maybe mark or indicate which bridges that the farmer shouldn't cross with their big load so that we don't outright X out all of them if there's only certain bridges that are having the issue?
I think there are already signage on those bridges, aren't they?
On those that are posted, there is. And go ahead.
As a result of the way the bill is written right now, we would have to load rate roughly 12,500 structures based on the vehicle. With that, we anticipate about 375 bridges would be having to be posted as a result of that. So the trouble that we have is that the vehicle is not defined from an engineering standpoint. So we have to assume the worst case scenario and have to load rate all the structures that we have to ensure that we have the safety of the public. And then if there is issues, we would go ahead and post that structure.
But we would be happy to work with them to try. I mean, we want to get a solution. We're there to support them. At the same time, we are not in a position to turn an 80,000-pound bridge into a 90,000-pound bridge that's
Sure.
60 years old.
Senator Cosgrove.
Mr. Chairman, basically, Senate Bill 73 is really a technical amendment, and it's overlooked in last year's bill to conform farm products overweight permits to other overweight permits. forestry, feed, tank wagons with respect to bridge crossings. Rather than prohibit any bridge crossings, this bill basically states that vehicles under a farm products permit must observe posted weight limitations on the bridges. Now, some overweight permits, for example, coal haulers, trucks hauling gravel, sand, asphalt, crushed stone, or liquids produced from gas or oil wells, well, they're silent on the bridge weight limits. You know, we're not asking for silence on bridges, but feel that it's only reasonable to be consistent with existing statewide permits, such as forestry products. The other thing to remember, we're talking about agriculture. Now, you can say you support agriculture, but you need to make sure that you do so if you're going to say you're going to do it. Basically, remember that agriculture is not a consistency product. You have harvest time. So it's not like it's going on every day, every week, whatever. You have your harvest of different products, and that's when these truckloads are going to impact these highways and bridges. I understand that the concerns of the engineers. I'm an electronics engineer, but I did take some statics and dynamics. Okay, I get it. All right, but I really think that what we're talking about here is not a tremendous impact, an overly onerous impact, as it makes it sound like it's an everyday thing. It's not. Basically, we're trying to compete with the surrounding states. If we're saying that agriculture is our largest product base in the Commonwealth, we need to try to help them to continue to be that. And this bill would help them do that.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Waxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a couple questions for VDOT. And when I first read this bill, it seemed to me just kind of cleanup language. It really did seem to be a technical amendment. And now hearing the discussion, it sort of seems that, in fact, what this bill would do is sort of switch the burden. Because right now it appears that for any operator who has one of these overweight permits, the burden's on them to find a route that would go over bridges that comply with this section. And now this would switch it on its head so that the burden would be on VDOT to show that they can't go over those bridges and culverts, and also go out and post everything and re-inspect everything. Is that correct?
I'd say that's correct. Because what we're doing, I mean, in the end, what we're doing is we're going back to a bridge that was designed for 80,000 pounds, and our engineer today is making a judgment that we think it can fit 90,000 pounds. I mean, that's what's happening with those structures that we're doing in the bills in 2015 and 2016 did as well.
And Mr. Chairman, following up on that, just two quick questions. So I guess the other question I have is why are all these bridges and culverts not already posted? Is it because we in the General Assembly increased the weight limit from 80,000 to 90,000? Or is it?
Yeah.
And you guys are still just catching up?
Go ahead. You're closer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Virginia, okay, so we have a set of structures vehicles that we need to load rate on whenever we have issues with our bridges that we look at. So, Senator Waxton, would you please repeat your question? I'm sorry.
I guess because the language in the bill says that as promulgated and posted in accordance with 46.2.1130. And my question is, why have we not promulgated and posted all these bridges and culverts already?
Because the vehicle that the vehicle in the bill is not defined. So we don't, because it's not defined right now, we haven't been able to do the analysis. And if it gets passed, then we'll have to assume the worst case scenario for that vehicle and have to load rate all those structures for that assumed vehicle.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, final question.
Senator Waxton.
So if this bill were to pass, would it not have a rather significant fiscal impact on VDOT and what you all would have to do in order to maintain the safety and integrity of our highways, bridges, and culverts?
Mr. Chair, that is accurate. We've done some preliminary estimates, and right now, if we had to go back and load rate bridges based on this legislation, we're estimating that it would take $15 to $18 million to load, rate, and post. That cost, depending on, the other issue is how long is that going to take? So it could be, I'm not sure if we could get it all done in 1 year, those impacts would be spread over that 1 year. If it took us 2 years, it'd be divided into 2 years. But that is right now what we are preliminarily estimating that we'd have to do. We would feel absolutely compelled if this bill passed to go out and load rate all of the bridges and for the 90,000-pound vehicle. And again, assuming a particular configuration or worst-case scenario if they're not axle limitations, et cetera.
Once
Mr.
again,
Chairman, I'm sorry, just, I didn't see, is there a fiscal impact statement?
There is no
associated?
fiscal impact statement on this.
Thank you.
So once again, this is a seasonal time, harvest time, cattle selling time. If you think they don't do it now, it's obvious. I mean, the sand, gravel, and asphalt piece of it was because they're hauling out of pits or hauling out of asphalt. They don't have a set of scales there per se on a lot of it. Same way with timber. And I'd say probably a large majority of these bridges are in my district. But I think knowing farmers the way I know them, they do the best they can to estimate that weight, and they're not going to cross it if they know it's going to be a hazard. And I think it's probably something that the agriculture community needs more than anything to be able to move that product. So, I think you were wanting to speak, Andrew.
Yeah, and I know it's getting late. I just wanted to say that, the language that we requested in this is patterned after other code sections. And there are other 90,000-pound trucks on the road, as Senator Cosgrove mentioned. We believe we're talking a very small number of vehicles that are out there, and most of my members buy permits like this as insurance because they do not have scales in the field, so in case they are caught overweight, and like you said, we're asking that they have to follow the posted bridges. So we're asking for the same thing that was included essentially. I know there are some little nuance difference in the forestry permit, but as Senator Cosgrove also said, some of the other permits are silent when it comes to bridges, and we're at least asking for what's posted. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Mr. Chairman, I guess this is a rhetorical question to VDOT. I want to get in a running debate with them, but if this bill was going to cause all of these bridge ratings, and we're already allowing coal, gravel, sand, asphalt, crushed stone, liquids produced from oils and wells, et cetera, you probably should have been doing this already then. So let's try not to blame this bill for overweight bridges, because it's already happening, and you know that. We did 90,000 pounds for silviculture last year. You know that. But you also know that these are very seasonal trips that are going to be taken with this. Look, I got the greatest respect for VDOT, but when they say this bill's going to cause us to do $15 million, maybe you should have been doing that before anyway and been part of the budget if we're already letting all these vehicles go across those bridges today. Okay. All I'm trying to do, I have a great amount of agriculture in my district. Most people don't realize that half of Virginia Beach and half of Chesapeake and most of Suffolk and all that area in there is agriculture. It's soybeans, it's corn, it's cotton, it's livestock. Certainly we have poultry all over. But again, anybody that's familiar with agriculture knows it's a seasonal business. So it's not going to have the daily impact that all of these other vehicles that I just mentioned are already having on the Commonwealth's bridges. So I would ask the committee to report this bill. I'll be glad to work with VDOT as it works its way through the House. I'm sure there's got to be some way. They offered an amendment, but I'm not comfortable with the amendment. But I would really like to make agriculture, look, we're losing farmers right and left as it is now. We need to try to make it easier for them to maintain those farms and maintain that food source for us. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, is there a motion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Marsden.
Would it be appropriate, given the fiscal impact, potential fiscal impact of this bill, that we perhaps report the bill and refer it to finance? Re-refer to finance?
I would be reluctant without a fiscal impact statement right now. I think it'd be premature. I mean, there was nothing ever given to us that there is a fiscal impact. And I just feel like it's probably something that'll have to work its way through.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that would certainly give the agency some time to perhaps, respond. But I'm uncomfortable reporting the bill without it having its financial implications considered. I understand the spot that the farm community is in, and they're trying to do the right thing here. And who knew that we just don't have a real good idea on these bridges. But I just think it needs to go to finance, and that's the only way I'd support it.
Mr. Chair, it may be inappropriate, but I move to report the bill.
There's a motion to report. And a second. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 73, vote aye on your electronic voting board.
Eight ayes, 4 nays, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bill passes 8-4, 1 abstention. David, are you prepared to take up Senator Deeds' bill?
Let me make quick work for you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, David Blunt on behalf of Albemarle County. This is Senate Bill 679. It's a simple one-word amendment on line 13 that would add Albemarle County to the list of those localities already in that code section that can adopt an on-street parking ordinance on secondary roads within its boundaries, specifically in Albemarle. They're looking to address some parking issues in some of the older suburban neighborhoods that are more densely populated. I can tell you in Albemarle, they have in a number of their suburban areas and neighborhoods, they utilize community advisory councils, so they would be working with them to really look at how they wanted to proceed with an ordinance in what areas and what it might look like.
Is this mainly, David, in residential or business communities?
It would be in residential areas. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Pretty straightforward. Any questions of the requester, I guess, not the patron?
Mr. Chairman, move to report.
There's a motion to report. Is there a second? All in favor say or vote aye on electronic voting board. Sorry.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 13-0.
Thank you for the courtesy, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Per request of the patron, Senate Bill 686 is to be stricken. Is there a motion to strike Senate Bill 686? There's a motion and a second to strike Senate Bill 686. All in favor vote aye on electronic voting board.
Thirteen ayes, 0 nays.
Sorry, Captain, I didn't know that was the only one you were waiting on. I could have got you out here earlier. Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have Senate Bill 97.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Basically, the bill calls for no person to be able to put an animal in their lap while operating a motor vehicle. to impede the free access and the use of the vehicle controls while operating a motor vehicle, or permit the animal to obstruct his vision while operating a moving motor vehicle. For purposes of this section, an animal means the same as that defined in 3.2, 6500. This is pretty clear. You put an animal in your lap, you are creating a very unnecessary distraction. I know people love their pets, but their pets can be in the back seat while in transit, and keeping things safe. Pets can be hurt by exploding airbags. Believe it or not, somebody did a survey, and 23% of the respondents said that when they hit the brakes, they grabbed their pet that's sitting in their lap. It is a distracted driving issue, one that is obvious. I think one that we can deal with here today, and let people know that that's just an inappropriate thing to do. And so that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any questions of the patron? Anyone in the
Yeah, I'm
audience
sorry.
like to? All right, Senator McClellan, I'm sorry.
Sorry, since I'm still new to these, can you remind me if there's no penalty provided, what the default penalty would be?
Mr. Chairman,
I
can
believe this
answer
would
that.
be when it's not mentioned, it would be a traffic offense.
It would be a traffic offense punishable by a fine of up to $250.
Follow-up question, Ms. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
So as I recall, we have a general reckless driving statute, and I think under certain circumstances, if you have like a German Shepherd sitting in your lap, you probably could be charged with reckless driving, but that's a broad statute. And so if we pass this more specific statute that says any animal in your lap is now a traffic infraction, I think that takes the possibility of a reckless driving charge out of the realm of possibility if you have a German Shepherd in your lap. Is that correct?
Senator McClellan, I don't know that anything takes away a law enforcement officer's discretion. Senator Carrico, you would be better able to say this, to take away a law enforcement officer's discretion in terms of if something exceeded the traffic offense category here in terms of the nature and the seriousness of the distraction. Senator Carrico, do you?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It would be a discretionary measure for the law enforcement officer, but it would be a much lesser offense. And 90%, I would say 98% of the time, the law enforcement officer is going to charge the reckless and let the judge decide.
Well, Ms. Chair, I'm not sure that's correct. This might be more a question for counsel, because I think under the law of statutory construction, if you have a specific statute that covers something that otherwise would be covered in a broader statute, the specific statute trumps. And I think that's the issue we faced with driving while texting, because, and as we've heard Senator Surville talk about, he had a case that did not fit within the parameters of the texting while driving statute, but because we had that texting while driving statute, the judge said that we couldn't, that person couldn't be convicted of reckless driving, and I'm worried we'd have the same problem here. And maybe if I'm wrong, counsel can give me comfort that I'm wrong, but they seem to agree with me.
In a law enforcement's capacity, he's going to evaluate if it's just the guy driving down the road with the animal opposed to the guy that wrecked because the animal is sitting in the lap. That's what he's looking at.
Mr. Chairman, wouldn't this give the police officer charging the reckless, an option for the judge to go to if it didn't meet the standards of reckless driving? So we're more looking at this thing in terms of probably in the reverse direction as to what Senator McClellan has presented. It's more likely to work its way down from the reckless than up from the statute to reckless.
Well, I think to her point, we don't normally give that discretion to the officer, we give that to the court, just like reckless, the judge has to impose improper.
And, I don't think particularly officers want to charge somebody with 2.5-pound fluffy in their lap with reckless driving, but it does give, the officer a charge that they can use that sort of fits the situation.
Of course, there's no one else on here to speak. My biggest problem is Fluffy usually rides with those farmers in my area that haul those cattle across those bridges, and
well, Fluffy can take up a position in the passenger
and they're not
seat
called Fluffy.
in the back seat, and but Fluffy does not belong in your lap. It is a distraction, and I think that the negative aspects, as Senator McClellan brought up to this bill, are pale in comparison to the benefits of making sure that people don't do this.
Okay. Anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill? Hearing none, is there a motion on the bill?
Don't everybody talk at once.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
He wants to know if you would prefer a no vote or a PBI.
Ask, because I hate it when I go over to the House and I don't get a vote. So if you want to say it's that guy from Roanoke who wouldn't pass this fine bill, I'm okay with giving that, but.
Well, it is, seeing as how I wouldn't want to put my friends to any great distress, a no vote is just fine.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Hearing no vote, bill dies like a motion. All right. Next, I think, let's see who's left on the list. Senator Favola. Dogs down my way are so smart they can drive themselves.
Mr. Chairman, this is Senate Bill 46, and there is an amendment. So it should be.
All right, if you'd like to report the amendment.
On line 14 of the introduced version, after pedestrian, strike has safely crossed and insert has passed the lane in which the vehicle is stopped.
All right, is there a motion on the amendment? Is there a second? All right, it's been moved second. We adopt the amendment. All in favor say aye. All opposed? All right, last bill, let's pay attention.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
I've seen this one so many forms and fashions, so.
But you're going to love this fashion.
Sure I will.
The only thing this bill does is it says, rather than yield when a pedestrian is passing the lane in which the vehicle is stopped, you must stop. So it doesn't say you have to stop the entire time the pedestrian is crossing the crosswalk, but just when the pedestrian is crossing the lane that you're in. Most drivers do that now. Otherwise, you would hit the pedestrian. But I changed the word yield to stop, and I narrow this bill, because other bills were not quite as narrow, to the lane in which, the lane in which the vehicle is stopped. I mean, that's the bill.
And what would be your definition of yield if someone is in the crossway?
My definition of yield would be to go around the pedestrian.
That's not the definition.
But you're probably telling me
Wrong.
yield is to give them the right of way. But the fact is, in these urban environments, people are interpreting yield to mean as long as they can get around the pedestrian and without hitting them, they can do that because the law doesn't say stop,
So
which is why I've put this in.
I would tell you how I explained it in the many times that this bill has come before subcommittees. I can assure you the people that perceive yield as to go around them, if it was a truck coming through that lane, they would stop.
Okay. If it was a truck coming, the truck driver would stop.
Because that truck
driver's more
driver's
informed.
going to run over them.
Yeah.
The yield does mean stop, and it doesn't mean you can go around them. It doesn't mean to slow it. I just feel like if we do this, we start confusing what yield right away
Well,
means.
I will just say
Then you're going to
that-
have people stopping every time they come there, whether there's someone in it or not. And right now, they can proceed through cautiously. That's what yield means, stop or proceed through without someone there. If we
Well, my
start,
bill only has you stopping if a pedestrian's actually in the lane.
yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work now. That's the part that I think that will confuse if we start doing these things.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
I
with
know.
all due respect.
And I
can
respect
just-
what you're trying to do. You
Yeah,
probably
there's
got
a
several
different
pedestrians got run
interpretation of
over.
Yield, because when you're going to merge on a highway and it says yield, the goal of the driver is to keep driving at current speed and to get onto that lane without stopping. And so yield, when you have a pedestrian in a crosswalk, some people think, oh, I just go around. And my goal is to not stop. I don't want to hit the pedestrian, but just swing around them or do this and that. And I just, all right, I'll just give you a few statistics, then I won't burden you anymore.
Okay.
Okay.
And might I say, I've been up in your region for a couple of times, and I don't think anyone up there knows what yield means, even to my car.
Oh, dear. Well, maybe we have to put better signage up with a more clear explanation. Pedestrian motor vehicle crash deaths have increased 46% since 2009, and these deaths account for 16% of crash fatalities, and this is according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. And pedestrian deaths occur predominantly in urban settings where high visibility enforcement, including red light cameras and speed cameras and right turn on red cameras, have been increasingly installed, which is why we can gather this data. So because the safety issue is beginning to show itself, I thought we could address it in a reasonable fashion. So I respectfully submit my bill and ask the committee members to vote for it.
Okay.
I may have a few speakers. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Any questions of committee right now? Senator Wexton.
Could I ask council to read the amendment again?
I have copies if that would be helpful as well. It's on line 14, the introduced version. After pedestrian strike has safely crossed, and insert has passed the lane in which the vehicle is stopped.
I would just note, Mr. Chairman, my bill is much narrower than the previous bills.
It is narrower, but it still doesn't mean. So you're just basically saying once they pass the car can proceed forward. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for the patron and I guess anybody. What if you have a 4-lane highway, the 2 lanes in each direction divided by a double yellow, and the pedestrian is crossing and is, on the left lane.
Okay.
Can a car turn in front of that pedestrian onto?
Like make a left-hand turn?
Yeah, I mean, when you define lane, does it include both of those lanes in the same direction of travel, or does it only include the 1 lane?
I will ask General Counsel, since we drafted that. She drafted it after consultation.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Wexton, I think that it's ambiguous as I don't know that I can make that determination of which lane would be referenced. I think the intention was that it was the lane directly in front of the vehicle. So I'm not sure that it would include alternate lanes.
And Mr. Chairman, just following up on that, I guess my concern would be if a vehicle is turning or turning into a lane and there's a pedestrian crossing and they're not yet in that lane of travel.
If they're not yet in that lane, the pedestrian, then the car can keep moving. The pedestrian would have to be in the lane in front of the car, and the car would have to wait until the pedestrian crossed. Is that fair?
So if they're crossing, someone can turn in front of them, just,
As long as
inches or
that
feet from
pedestrian's-
them, as long as they haven't gotten.
Correct. As
Which-
long as they haven't
which-
stepped in front of that lane.
Which I think creates another issue of drivers being creatures of habit, watching traffic, oncoming, and not paying attention to, they see that car proceeding, they're not paying attention to that pedestrian that's in that crosswalk.
Well, I would hope they would, because at some
Yeah,
point,
would
the pedestrian's going to be in front of the car. So, maybe let my speaker speak.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Champ Burnley again, Virginia Bicycle Federation. I wanted to bring some stats out that I got this afternoon from DMV, and we really have a problem here in the Commonwealth. In 2013, I've got figures from 13 through 16. We had 75 pedestrian fatalities in 13, 88, 77, and in 2016, we had 122 pedestrians killed. And if I'm not mistaken, I think in 2010, we could have lost our speaker because he was run over up at 9th and Broad Street. But, you know, again, a person against a car is tough. And I mean, I'd love to see stop for pedestrians because it's pretty black and white that way. But again, this is a bad trend, and we're talking about saving lives here, so I would hope that we would support this. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Noel Dominguez with Fairfax County. The Board of Supervisors has historically supported legislation such as this. We have a lot of areas of concentrated growth, and with more transit service coming in through Metro Rail Silver Line and through our connector service, we have a lot of people that are sticking to pedestrian transit or walking more and on vehicles less. And we feel that this actually helps with pedestrian safety and people accessing transit. Thank you.
I would just reiterate that point. A lot of the communities up in Northern Virginia, the local governments are making a concerted effort to do a live where you work model. So they have apartments and businesses located together, the goal being that people don't have to travel to work and folks will walk more. So we're trying to promote walking.
So I'm a creature of habit of watching people, just of my old profession, but I've noticed more people walk into crosswalks looking at their cell phone instead of looking at the traffic. And
Yes, we have
I'm
that
not
too.
so sure your statistics doesn't reflect that now. But I really do think that it confuses the issue when we start saying, now stop, then go, when yield to right-of-way means just patiently yield to that individual till they cross that crosswalk. Senator Cosgrove, then Senator Chase, and then Senator Marsden.
Just a brief question. Looking at the language on lines 13 and 14, the driver of any vehicle on a highway shall yield the right of way to any pedestrian crossing such highway by stopping and remaining stopped. How far away do you have to stop?
By stopping and remaining stopped until such pedestrian has passed the lane.
How far away do you have to stop? And
I'm sorry?
is there any determination on how far away you have to stop?
No, no, that would not be addressed here.
And secondly, short of hitting the, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
And then,
you don't
Mr.
want to
Chairman,
hit the pedestrian.
The driver of any vehicle, I defer to your state police background. Does that include bicycles and the skateboards and the foot scooters?
If they're on the highway, they're
inline
considered
skates
a
and things
vehicle.
we talked about earlier? So they would all be under the same restriction, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Horse. Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment for the patron. This is personal to me. I had a friend that was killed in Richmond crossing one of the roads. So I think you're on to something here. I'm just not convinced this is the vehicle to do it simply because, as Mr. Chairman communicated, it's how do you enforce that and at what point do you enforce that? So maybe it's just something that, I mean, we work on outside of session or outside of this committee, but I do see it, especially as an urban issue that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's definitely an issue.
Local governments would be enforcing it, just as they enforce other state traffic codes. I don't know how else to fix it. If you have any ideas, Senator Chase, I'm happy to consider them.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. yield is a rather imprecise term. I think to most drivers, it means if I can beat them to the spot, I've yielded. And if I cut 6 inches off their rear end, I've yielded to them. And stopping,
area.
well, you know, Virginians are consistent in their driving all over the Commonwealth, it's been my experience. But I mean, that's how we interpret yield. If I didn't hit them, I yielded.
Yeah.
And what stop does is give people a precise term that they will understand. Because the yield just means I didn't hit them, so therefore I yielded to them. And so I would, if it's an appropriate time, I'd move to report the bill and put language in that people will understand that they need to stop prior to hitting the pedestrian in the crosswalk until they've cleared the lane that the car intends to use. I think it's pretty clear.
All right, we have a motion to report. Is there a second?
Second.
And properly seconded. All those in favor to report Senate Bill 46, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Six ayes, 7 nays.
The bill fails to report 7-6. Thank you.
That's too bad. I'm coming back next year. One other request, Mr. Chairman, should we send this to the Joint Commission on Transportation to look at since it is an issue?
I think we've done killed it. We could
Well,
we could do a letter.
I would appreciate that. They defeated a bill in courts, and through a letter, my topic of my bill will be studied by the Crime Commission. So maybe the Joint Commission on Transportation can look at this.
You know, transportation accountability, or if it's in the Crime Commission, it's probably.
Well, that was another bill.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
So if you can do a letter.
Sure. If you'll note that, Chrissy, I'll do a letter.
Thank you,
for them
Mr.
to look
Chairman.
at it. All right, that completes our docket. I appreciate it. I know it's been a long day, but we have several bills in the committee, and we're going to have several long days just to get through the process. Appreciate your patience. And we're adjourned.